Yeah. So before we keep on going, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It is 11:34 on Wednesday, January 9th, 2019, and welcome to our strat plan and IT meeting. So we're gonna let Chris and Morgan continue with their IT support, with getting everybody on board with their e-agendas, and then following that, I think you guys have a presentation.
I'll just do some quick
Excellent, and then I think we're gonna break for lunch. Is that correct? And then we'll move into the strat plan hopefully by 1 o'clock. So very informal. Continue doing what you're doing instead to start the meeting.
You got your going? Is it good? Hold one, take home and don't ever break that. Oh, I might have to do that.
Yeah.
I might have it.
I'm just not sure which email it's under. I think I know it, but I have 5 or 6 passwords.
Yeah,
That's around it.
Yeah, and yeah. It's just you set it as high or as low as you want, yeah.
So it just wants you to change your angle on it.
Okay.
Oh, look at that.
The same thing.
Did they know you were what? Did you see the?
What? Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, well, see?
got horses too.
Oh, everybody has the same one, I'm assuming? Yeah.
Yeah, so the only challenge that we have with the iPads is some folks like to change where their icons go. So I want this icon on the right hand, I want this icon on the left hand. Unfortunately, due to the level of control that we wanted on the iPads, just to be able to push them to see folks, we can't do that. So if you want an icon on the right instead of the left, or up or down or whatever, just let us know and we'll move that for you. But it's not as easy as doing it on your own anymore.
Oh, okay. Sounds like first world problems.
It is a first world problem.
So if you download apps, they will still show up, but it'll just go in order on the front screen for you.
Okay.
Okay, so you're good to go.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're in, you're in.
You get to boss me around today.
Yeah.
So did you tell everybody how we first met?
No, I think Curtis knows. I don't know if everybody.
Yes, that's right. I remember you said that one.
Yeah, isn't that
I don't know because everybody knew that.
Took me a couple of years to figure that out, but
Yeah.
Why does she look familiar? I haven't gone into township stop wearing my suit. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay. Yes, I heard.
We're all in the same.
It's very familiar. Actually, I got a call from the council center the other day. He's like, "Hey, I'm having a problem. Here's my daughter." But you just handed it right off. So.
6 is probably easier than I can use the same one.
Oh, they're so
Okay, so
smart.
you don't have 2
Oh,
factor.
yeah,
I'm
they
still
are.
fine with
Your
that.
little granddaughter Annie, they were in
I've
Switzerland.
got it 1, 2, 3.
I'm over now.
Phone
Yeah.
at 6:50.
There's 6.
And she's doing FaceTime. Her mother's in bed and her dad's out. But there's Annie talking to Grandpa.
Lincoln FaceTimed me yesterday.
My grandkids don't know that one yet.
2.5.
They know that one of my iPads is my work phone.
And
Never.
always celebrate about a different thing.
Okay, so you're
The other thing that you're going to be huge, you're just going to be
Well,
also
he'll take my phone, he's down at CJ. He just knows what where to push and he gets it turned on and he just flips it on. So it pushes the little thing to watch the video. So
you know your way around the email app.
No.
But he does, and he does it well.
Nick's disconnected too. They were all connected. Is that one in the bottom?
Oh, that's on FaceTime.
No, I didn't have Marianne's Adelaide Metcalfe password for me, or Ejin. Both are on my laptop and we reset it.
Yeah, I know for sure. That's why you see my desk, the boxes on my desk
Yeah.
stand up.
How's Dad doing?
Intermittently.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
shiny.
did get some skating
And then you put it in a budget. Takes time to do it.
Oh yeah, you're fine. Yeah. If you don't have it, we can change it.
Somebody's telling you something.
Would it be on there?
So if you were, reading through this at home,
If no one else does it, then.
I'm thinking I got it from Donna, so I don't think I know my email password for here. I just go on it.
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't
want
have
to sage it.
So Keegan come out and boy, is he a really good
He is a good skater.
Top
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to that.
That's good. Good to have help.
So anyways,
There's a bunch of girls
Let's get
from
your
Sarnia.
So this is the highlight. So really this is for, you see something in the report, and I need that, that I need that.
Thanks, sometimes you skip over that.
Yep, as you go,
Not
so
so
I'll
much.
see that there, and there.
Is that's not the 6th one?
Oh, I know.
It's funny.
Well, no, this one I'm fine with. I just, I knew they said it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what are they gonna do with it? And that's what I'm like,
There wouldn't be this
fine,
to
because
have
I was
that.
there sitting there, severing it into two, I think, if I have it.
Across all these numbers will
That's it.
change.
That's
Go
it.
back in, tap in,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
little trash can.
Maybe, but for right now, no.
Underline that, I'll show you that.
We're trying to accommodate her.
Oh, they are.
She gets to stand.
It normally doesn't bother me.
And then when you got, you know, just tap
Pardon me?
I really don't
No, I don't know.
Christmas dinner is really bad.
So everything that will be,
You can go back on it as well, so once you're here,
everything else that the iPad can do is on the
And it's a
second page.
pain management.
Oh, okay.
You may wanna.
So
Pages
that
is Apple's version.
February 27th is when
Okay.
it will happen.
You know it is.
I have,
And numbers.
If you have problems with it, you
and
can go to
Those
I don't even know what I
I'm gonna get these two
I'm
process
not
changed.
sure about it.
Yeah, really, and then once this is, passed, it's
So if there's any questions, I'm also gonna contact you.
So I have to see
So,
what
if you need anything,
like Bert was saying, so that's what we're able to take. If you download the
Yes. Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
taking that.
I've been doing those stretches.
If you do, the only thing
It's just gonna start.
One that I get on before.
on page 2 here, you can find stuff like camera, apps, or reminders, that kind of stuff. Put the reminders stuff in
What you doing?
Okay. Oh, up here. So this is a list of documents. You want it all.
Oh, nice. Okay. Oh, good to know.
And if there's new documents that they want you guys to have access to, instead of having to send an email to everyone, they can just tell us to add it, and we'll sign it, probably by the end.
Maybe not.
As well, on the front page here is just a link to it.
It's first thing in the, like in the morning.
It won't be
Yeah,
this fair.
where it's just until I get to
No,
work.
it's,
Oh, boy, good.
I could
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the old
Kind of know the navigation side, so.
So that one's already separate.
This
Everybody
lady's
should get
feet
access.
This one is
are so
already
bad.
Because
separate.
it's
She
just what we
was
have
on
installed
the
for actually.
side.
Recording and stuff like that.
She
So that's
was
also
on
America's Chair Marriage. Chair Marriage.
Oh, wow.
She was a
Premier
Or
Trump.
whatever it was.
Well, that's standing on concrete for down here.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. No, not bad.
Oh, no, no. It says-
Yeah,
yeah, it was
yeah,
only
yeah.
here, it goes back to Toronto.
Oh, okay.
So it just looks like we're.
So it's just the zoning.
Yes, that's fine. You know, it's the same.
So it changed to surplus dwelling and agricultural. That's just part of the.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
So there, that's it's just part of the conditions that you do the zoning.
So it's just a matter of getting on the agenda here.
Yeah, so I'm gonna change, I'm gonna do color change, only Bailey knows how to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, any problems, let us know.
I just need new email.
Takes us right
To
to.
the.
Do you have a preference on those?
The account isn't my email address. is it?
Anytime.
I took the K out of my name.
Might spell it wrong.
Well, maybe that's why it didn't work.
Breaking everything.
Is that a first time? Not the first time. Won't be the last either. spell my own name wrong.
Oh, no E on the end of Metcalfe?
Probably just too long to show.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Still reset for email though?
Yeah.
I'm usually not the one that has trouble.
Oh, you're not having trouble, it's us.
Makes out more.
I didn't realize there were so many passwords in there.
Yeah, it's amazing. We were going through our password list and we have over 1,000.
You still out 100 last week.
Oh, jeez.
Well,
So,
I have a little book at home because every credit card has a different password. It goes in my safe when I'm not home.
there we go. So why don't you just pop them in here?
Okay. Is the agenda need reset?
Yeah.
oh, okay. 'Cause I know about some of these on the list, 'cause I found, that's,
This is the only thing you could want of.
Yeah.
If you have too many, I'll take them.
I was gonna say, in my webinar for sure. Every room in my house, I think has one now.
I was actually more like one of the words.
I went to Costco and got
So they
some
still show
flashers. He keeps walking
Oh no,
on.
after that's what it is, so I don't.
Actually,
But those not
I have one of these, one of the plugs, and I just plug like my Fitbit, my phone, everything, I plug into this box. I just take the
Well, you think it's came from Costco, or you can plug in or these things all the time. So he says I keep losing his puppy and walking away with my hip and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm able to, I'm not to set it up and there's a thing in and then it's all
So you
good.
take even not sending your email.
So they can't, yeah.
There's nothing takes it, right?
we saw a bunch of complaints that they're coming in about the landfill and stuff, so he's like,
I did a drive around yesterday, that's like first
Contact
outside
things
the
I was told in
landfill.
Staples on.
Yep, I don't think I did anything.
Somebody's got to pull
I didn't even sync my calendar because it's so much.
I wish.
Yeah.
Always.
Because why do you guys when you remember Floyd when he had that dump you could eat off the ground in there? You're not supposed to, my cousin keeps correcting me, it's not a dump, it's a landfill.
Are you talking about why the dump here is burning? It's on fire.
Oh.
Yeah, I seen that was high back here.
Oh, I saw that today, there's,
Yeah,
what's going on there?
I don't know, maybe we're making another 2 years.
they're doing some cleanup there, they've been doing,
I wondered if it was brush, it didn't actually look like a landfill.
they're in their work, they're in there actually working, so
Okay.
it's all under control.
You're good.
Yeah.
The only other thing is moving forward for the old.
Do that on both. Yeah. No, I didn't.
Budget.
Yeah. The agenda and Adelaide Metcalfe. So they're all yours.
So just a quick overview of IT, just you know what kind of services we provide, how we got here, some other stuff. There's a few questions around cybersecurity, more so around Midland and Wasaga Beach. Seems to be a hot topic in municipal government. So for those that I haven't introduced myself to, I'm Warren Teller, I'm the Director of IT in Middlesex County. Chris Daly, who's the Manager of Technical Services. We've traditionally been what I would call a technical services type of IT department. What I mean when I say that is we worry about fixing computers, we worry about internet connections, we worry about servers and email and stuff like that. So that's very technical. when it comes to IT. That's even consumer devices such as iPhones, iPads, tablets, this video camera system. That was all done by Chris's team. The change that we've made in 2018, and we're starting to go full force in 2019 with this new division of IT called Business Services. What that is more of the Bailey's been doing such a good job at technical services that we don't have the same issues that we used to have. We don't have the same issues anymore. So computers are typically working, internet's generally stable, servers, email, it's all expected to work. So we've made a significant investment in IT infrastructure, so what do we do with that now? Our response to that is business services, because there's a lot of, even though we've gone into the digital age, there's still a lot of manual things that we do with computers. So we can start to automate those things. One of the hot topics across the county now is electronic document management. So instead of having paper records, they're now electronic records, PDFs instead of paper. Once you start getting into electronic records, those things can move around the organization fairly quickly, and now you can start automating processes. So a prime example is EMS. They used to collect data across their organization. EMS is our paramedic service. They used to collect data across the paramedic service that would take about 6 to 8 hours just to collect it, and then they had to interpret it, and then they had to make sure that it was accurate. We've been able to build a system that takes that almost 2 days worth of work and do it in 30 seconds. So that's the type of impact that we're trying to make with the new division of IT. Of course, the other team's going to continue to keep the lights on, continue to change out equipment, make sure that the systems and services are still working, but now we're trying to tie those systems and services together so that we can make more impactful automated processes rather than doing manual things all the time. Outside of that, I think that's pretty much covered. Outside of that, we try to get, we have a IT consolidation strategy in the county where what we try to do is leverage each other's equipment as much as possible. So I'm going to touch on cybersecurity really quickly because that's an emerging issue within the county and well, in IT in general. What we've done, particularly with you folks and your investment, is we've taken your servers and your backup strategy and made sure that we have the same equipment in different locations throughout the county. So everybody owns their own equipment, but if, say, something catastrophic happened here, the backup system failed and it no longer would recover any data, we can take that tape and literally walk it over to Glencoe or Kilworth or whatever, pop it into their system, recover all of your information, and we're back up and running. So those things people pay a lot of money for. We've been able to share our investments and leverage that so that it's more of an economies of scale situation. What happened in Midland and Wasaga Beach, they were attacked by what we call ransomware. And what ransomware is it takes your data and it encrypts it so that you can't use it. And then it pops this nice little message up on your screen that says, you must pay to get your data back. So we've been attacked by this probably 10 times in the last 3 years. It's normal. It's not something that isn't going to happen or might not happen. It is going to happen. It's not preventable. There's too many ways for it to attach to your system. Either you're targeted or I accidentally visited a link that then downloaded a file that then started encrypting your information. So it's going to happen. It's inevitable. The best way we can do that is hire county IT services. So we have a highly specialized team that has built in, we do IT security in a proactive sense. So we want to make sure that we're constantly monitoring what's happening on your network. It builds a pattern. So it's kind of like artificial intelligence, if you want to call it that. So somebody's always watching what's happening. And anything that's outside of the norm, we get an alert about that because it's typically something that's not supposed to be happening. So one of our local municipalities, I'll just say the name because they allow me to do that. Middlesex Center was attacked by ransomware, right? And what ended up happening by noon, we got an alert that this thing was happening. So we were able to connect into their system, shut it down by 2 o'clock, understand what was happening. It ended up taking out a significant portion of their IT systems. So their financial database was encrypted. Their HR database was encrypted. Their file server was encrypted. So that's a lot of employee information. That's a lot of revenues and expenditures, and that's just a lot of information that's now locked. And they wanted, I'm not sure what the
I don't remember what the number was, but
they wanted a significant amount of money, it was in the tens of thousands to get the data back.
So when you say locked, do you mean it's just nobody can get at it, not even the hackers, or do you mean were they able to see it, lock it, and have that information?
So it was stored on the system, so it was still kind of in our control, but the hackers encrypted it using a password, basically. So much like you log into wireless, there's a password that.
But can they see that data? Can they see the information?
They technically could see that.
Okay.
This particular virus, if that's what you want to call it, didn't have that capability. So it was just about encrypting the files and then demanding money.
Like locking them.
Yeah, locking them.
Okay.
So there are types of viruses out there that would then kind of start sending that data somewhere so that people can read it. But this one, thankfully, it just locked it. So we basically needed to pay for a key to get the data back.
And that happens? Like they actually...
That happens. Midland and Wasaga both paid in the tens of thousands of dollars to get the data back.
Track where that goes or anything?
Because there's you heard of Bitcoin or anything like
That's
that?
how they do it.
Crypto,
Yeah.
whatever. That's how they do it, right? It's untraceable. It attaches to a network that's below the internet. So it's kind of, they call it the dark net or the dark web or whatever. So it's untraceable. So that money's gone. But thankfully they got their data back. Yeah.
So, do you do like a cybersecurity checks? Like, do you send out a cookie email to us to see how bright we are, to see if we bite? Like, do you do an audit thing once or twice a year to see how silly we are?
Yeah. So I have a few opinions of doing that. I don't like to test people without education first because it's not fair. It's like asking me to do a calculus test and then telling me I failed because I have no education, and then me feeling like I failed something. So in 2019, what we're working on is an education plan across the county. We piloted it in Middlesex County over the last 2 years. 2016, 2017 is when we did it. 2018, we skipped it. And then we started kind of reaching out to all our local municipalities, say we have this program that we can put in place. Nobody really gravitated to it yet because they didn't really understand the severity. So now that we have Midland and Wasaga as examples, everybody's asking about this education program. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with council members, we're going to work with staff across the county, deliver just an education seminar on safe browsing techniques, what to look for when someone's sending you an email that might look malicious in nature or bad. Even I was phished, so they call it phishing. Someone sent me an email. So I'm part of an association, and my president was at a conference, and she was taking care of speaker gifts. And we knew all this because we were there as a speaking component. Somebody went on her Twitter account, found out that she was at this conference because she likes to tweet and tell everybody what she's doing, and that's awesome. You should celebrate what you're doing. But they picked up information and then targeted me as the vice president and said, "Hey Morgan, I'm at the conference. I don't have speaker gifts for the people that I'm supposed to be giving speaker gifts to. Can you go out and buy some Apple iTunes cards?" So without really thinking about it, I was in a meeting at the time. "Hey Connie, I'll get back to you in a few minutes. I'm in a meeting. I apologize." So they said, "No worries." So I got out of the meeting. I said, "Hey Connie, what is it that you're exactly looking for? You just said Apple cards." Sounds kind of weird, but more details, please. So then they said, "Oh yeah, give me two $500 Apple iTunes iCards and scratch the backs and send me the numbers." And that's when I went, "Yeah, there's no way that this is legit." So this is a person that's been in the industry for more than 15 years being attacked by somebody, and I initially fell for it because everything made sense. I was targeted, so it's not always that they're not always targeted. Usually they're just broad emails. "Hey, can you please send me something?" And people will send them something. So what we want to do is build an awareness program around what to look for. If I would have looked at the email address right away, I would have found out that it was connie.mccutcheon1725@gmail.com, not conniemccutcheon@misa.ca. So that would have been my immediate trigger. Right? So that's good. So basically what we try to do is, so in the case of Middlesex Center, going back to kind of the ransomware thing, we have backups that occur every night. We do full backups every week, and then we do anything that's changed throughout the week. So at any given time, we would lose 8 hours worth of information. So that's a generally accepted practice in municipal government. We're not a bank, right? We're not worried about microtransactions that are constantly being backed up because of somebody's finances. So it's a generally accepted practice. If we were attacked at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we would lose 6 hours of information, because what we would do is just go back into that tape, we would restore the data, and we'd be off to the races. So we wouldn't pay a cent. So in Middlesex Center's case, we were back up and running because of Bailey's team by midnight of that night. So we saved tens of thousands of dollars by not having to pay that encryption fee or pay the hackers for our data back. We also got them up probably, so I was, one of my good friends owns a security company, Digital Boundary Group, and he said, Morgan, it would take us 2 weeks to get them back to where they were. So because of our processes and the practices that we put in place, we were back up and running by midnight, and they went back to work like as if nothing happened the next day. So like that's the type of programming that we want to build, and it's cheap because everybody's taking a component of that and we're paying it at the same system. So that's probably the biggest win I think that we've had in a long time, aside from just being able to put equipment out there and make sure that people are working. So any questions on that? It's a pretty long-winded.
Other than when you're targeting this education forum to start?
So probably Q2, Q3 is when we'll start kicking it out. So we want to get through the summer because everybody's on vacation. It's hard to get everybody, but everybody's back in September and they're ready. So it'll probably be September, October when we get in there. The summer we'll start to, just build that awareness program and test it so that we make sure that we're hitting all the right audiences and all that stuff. So there's stuff that you folks would need to know that staff would need to know and vice versa. So that's that.
And I don't have any problem with being tested, because at the end of the day, you're not going to test us and make a public spectacle of us. You're just trying to test us to keep us cognizant of the fact that, oh yeah, we have to be mindful of that. So I have no problem with being tested.
Yeah, we'll do the test after the education. It's
just
one of the philosophies.
And that's fine. But I mean, that's as an end game, as long as that's still part of it, I'm okay with that myself, because I'll probably fail it. So I
might fail it too.
That'll make me aware
I
of.
might fail it too.
No, it makes you more cognizant of what you're supposed to be looking for. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, we've actually partnered with a nonprofit Canadian organization because there's two aspects to that. We have a big library system, and they're always asking us how we can educate their patrons on cybersecurity, because digital literacy in the community is very important. We want everybody to come along because we don't want that divide, right? So that's why we still have tellers at the bank, because not everybody's used online banking yet or trusts it or so on and so forth. So what we want to do is raise that digital literacy, and a big component of that is cybersecurity awareness. So we're working on a partnership with this Canadian nonprofit that will deliver that service for us, and hopefully for free for the library board. But then we can also feedback that as a pilot for the county and our residents. So I think it'll be a good program. It does have a testing component on there. They've taken a lot of my feedback because they wanted to test first to get a baseline. Again, that baseline doesn't really tell you anything that you don't already know. So let's educate everybody, and then we get that baseline going. Just a few financial positives that I've touched on already. We've lowered capital and operating costs across the county through IT services, again, because it's that collaborative, cooperative approach that everybody's bought into. You folks endorsed a IT services agreement earlier last year that basically has two journeys. One is that collaborative, cooperative approach that everybody's walking down, which means we're sharing equipment, we're sharing services, we're making sure that our costs are low and everything else, and our service is high. But then there's an independent path. So say there's something that you folks really wanted to do it on your own, or that you're doing first, you're able to do that without affecting. So you can make any decision you want, and we're here to support you. And that's really the message, is that we're here to support council, we're here to support staff, whatever endeavor that you want to go down. So outside of that, talk about a little broadband.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So folks have probably heard about Swift.
Yep.
Yeah. They are interesting, to say the least. Curtis knows all about this. So here's me and Bill Rent probably every morning. So they have yet to secure funding from the province and the federal government. So what they're doing today is on the backs of municipal dollars. And I have to say, the best decision I've seen council make in my world, well, they really good decisions, but particularly with Swift, is that we decided to hold our money back and say, until you prove that you've done X in the county, you're not going to get our money. So everybody across Southwestern Ontario blasted us for that approach, because we weren't doing what everybody else is doing. Well, we kind of had an idea. We looked very critically at their project, and it didn't really make sense for Middlesex County. We have a lot of good things. We have a lot of service providers, local service providers in our area that are investing in their own infrastructure. We are landlocked, so if you need to go anywhere, you have to go through Middlesex County. So investment's going to happen here regardless. The one thing that SWIFT has done really well is the advocacy piece. So people are actually talking about broadband. They're talking about the economic growth and positive aspects of what broadband can do for the community. So it's set it on the council agenda, and I never thought I'd see that as an IT person. I didn't think I would see that in my lifetime, but it's there. People are talking about it. So now we're starting to see investment. We're starting to see the market push. And what I've actually noticed in Middlesex County particularly is that service providers are starting to invest in infrastructure sooner than they would have before. So where they would have taken 10 years to get out to a small community, they're cutting that in half into 5 years or even 2 years in sometimes. So they want to get there before SWIFT makes them go there, because what SWIFT wants to do is impose regulations on how they do certain things. That's not good for business models in the current market. So again, another rant about SWIFT is they're too busy trying to change the market landscape. They're too busy trying to change where healthcare is spending their money. They're too busy trying to change political landscapes when they should just be getting money in the ground. So if SWIFT does fail and they do not do what they're supposed to do, we have a plan that is more of a community-based program where we take a community perspective on certain things. Bailey's heard me rant about this before, but in Canada we have a bit of a cultural bias on how we do broadband. So everybody wants wires in the ground. If you go to Costa Rica, you can answer your cell phone in the middle of the rainforest and be talking to your mom or dad back in London or wherever it is, because they didn't have the economic ability to start building out certain types of broadband that we would have here in Canada. So they put towers up, and it's all cellular service out there, and it's better service than we have here, and we even have wires in the ground. So we need to start kind of having those conversations, because for every 1 kilometer of fiber that we bury, it's up to $25,000 per kilometer. We could build a tower for $50,000 and have 10 kilometers around that radius covered, right? So again, it's very, in my opinion, is a community-focused approach, and that's what we've been promoting with the new government. We'll see what happens.
So just to clear in my mind, so you would go to someone like Bill or Brook Telecom and ask them to expand into Middlesex with their ExploreNet?
Yep. Or yeah, it could be we have a community that's down the road. The best way to basically tell us what the best way is to connect that community. And it could be wireless technology. It could be a cable in the ground, because that's the best way to do it. Who knows? But the problem with SWIFT is they only have one approach, and that's a very expensive approach, and it's going to be a very costly approach going forward. So, and it's not getting people connected. It's a 40-year plan.
Well, the other thing, we've been talking, like in general terms of Middlesex County, this has been going on for 20 years.
Yeah.
And the world's evolved in such a way that, you know, a lot of people want to work from home, and that's not sustainable. It's with what we have in place right now, you cannot work from home. You can't be in the middle of doing something, or you can't be relying on the internet if you're, you know, trading commodities or something like that, and have the system all of a sudden crash on you. I mean, it's millions of dollars at stake, right? So at the end of the day, we want to foster and we want to create economic development in our community, but if we can't provide a basic service, that's troubling, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and there are actually through Community Futures Development Corp, there's an investor fund that they're talking about getting up and going, and so if someone like Betty Ann has more money she knows what to do with and wants to participate in that program, you know, there might be an opportunity there.
And invest back into broadband.
Yeah.
And then the return on investment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
There's
But it has to make
models
sense.
out there.
Yeah,
We just
yeah.
have to look at you know, the community perspective, and again what their tolerance for change is, and what they're willing to do.
Yeah. And to your point, when I was in Nicaragua, you go up on the top, they're all towers, and this is a third world country, and they have better internet than we do.
Yeah.
So it's
well, it
pretty
blew me away
frightening.
when the tourist guy was answering his phone. I can do that. Turn on my phone. My mom was calling me, so hey mom, I'm in the middle of the
Exactly.
Costa Rica. Like, it's
pretty frightening. Yeah.
So
Anyway.
a lot of different things we can be doing. Just have to find the right model. not sure Swift is.
I'm glad to hear you're not just keep sending them a check, because like I said, it's been going on for so long that somebody needs to stand up and do something, so that's good.
We haven't given Swift any money, just so you know.
They have
At all?
zero.
Yeah.
Oh,
Zero.
okay.
Zero.
Oh, at all?
Middlesex has
Okay.
never, we haven't given any money. We have money set aside if it goes forward, but they haven't gotten any money.
Yeah, they've taken up a lot of our time. We actually helped spin them up from our legal. They created their original bylaws. They've since changed them. We've helped try to guide them in the right direction, but the guy at the top has his opinions of the market, and they're coming out on this project. And it's,
And is that individual out of Kincardine or somewhere up?
well, he's up in
somewhere?
Grey County.
Grey,
so,
that's it.
so is Jeff Hogan. He's actually a friend of mine because we run in the same circle. He's an IT person. We belong to the same association, so him and I, over a couple of beers, we always go at each other and try and make him see the light, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not always.
Well, and internet companies are just popping up here and there. Like there's a new tower in the village here that my kids have joined because it's unlimited.
Mhm.
And who's the provider?
Well,
Can't
and
think of
would
the name of it.
the
Eastlink or
wind
no?
turbines
No.
be a good place to
That
put
Vulcan-
like receptors on to bounce
Vulcan Bridge or
internet
something?
off of?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't have the
Vulcan or something.
Falcon net.
or the knowledge of that,
That's
but
right.
what I
Yeah,
do hear
he was
is
Vulcan
they're not
something.
the best because they're a lot of metal. So
Oh.
But it won't be
metal
very
versus
wide.
wireless.
Yeah.
Well, they've told me I'm in the
That's
area
too
and the
bad
kids are
because there's
after
a lot
me.
of turbines.
Everybody's in my area.
My kids get really good signals, but I'm kind of over the bush, so I don't know.
Tower and bounce.
My signals.
That's a lot more way.
Maybe it goes for nothing for using that.
Yeah, for going to the tower. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. It just really comes down to what the tolerance is.
I'm just, the only thing that makes me think that about wire being, I guess you have the idea that
More secure.
if it signals in the air, it's easier to hack at. And I don't know if that's true or if that's just an old,
It used to be the
Perception?
case.
Yeah.
Now it would take quite a long time to capture enough of those airwaves to be able to unlock that signal. So the technology, not saying it's not there, you know, the NSA and all these other government military places would probably figure that out, but your regular Joe Blow hacker that's going to be in this area or even London, not going to be able to do that. So. And then you encrypt or you lock the signal or the airwave, but then you also, the way the internet's going is now they're locking every session. So when you log into your municipal website, I can't see what pages you're logging into anymore. Same with your banking. So there's lots of different levels. The biggest challenge is human behavior. That's where a lot of that stuff ends up coming out because we've had a long time putting systems and processes in place to monitor changes and patterns and email filtering and web filtering and all those things. That now it's really starting to come down to that education piece and the human behavior piece where we have to teach people what to look out for. Okay. Any other questions? We're good?
Anything else? No. Where are we? Just one question for myself. Where are we at for Adelaide Metcalfe for equipment and all kinds? Are we up to date, or do we need to look anything in the future, or where are we at with everything?
Folks are in good shape. Now it's just kind of some tweaking here and there.
Our server's been replaced in 2017.
Yeah.
We did a complete server replacement. We are working on updating all of the computer stations in our office. And we're also going to be bringing on board, which we'll talk about another time, I just wrote down, our fire department, so that our fire computer is part of our server system, and we're just being sure that it's secure and working towards our security systems. So
Makes sense.
Well, because they have to
Work
file
offices need
reports
anything?
quarterly and stuff, right?
they don't have computers out there right now.
They don't
What
need
they
them,
would
is
bring
it?
on for technology would be likely iPads when we get into asset management and
Yeah.
in some sort of a GIS program in that event. So that'll be
There's
coming out.
also a new firewall down there that's does intrusion prevention and things like that, which before there wasn't really anything in line, so that helps prevent bad things from coming in. And we also provide email filtering services, so if you ever get an email that says antispam.middlesex.ca and you need a release, there's a thing that says shoot us an email.
it's always been junk.
Yeah, see, it's doing its job then for sure. I mean,
I wish I had something that good on my home email.
Yeah, it's
Well,
funny.
that's the benefit of sharing, you know, the cost for that thing is now that we get that extra level of security. So, right.
No, that's fine. So those are just two more of the kind of security things. But yeah, as Kathy said, the servers are just a couple of years old, so you'll get at least another 3-4 years out of those easy. And then by that point, probably be more of a consolidation strategy to bring everything into the county data center. It's really dependent on internet out here at that point. So.
And then the only other question is, on everybody's iPads, do we have the helpline or whatever it's called, or our email address or phone number?
The contacts, we're going to pump a few contacts. I have to work with Kathy to
Okay.
determine which ones those are going to be. But we'll pump contacts to your iPad. So when you hit that contact button, you'll see service desk or Middlesex County service desk or even my name or Chris's name on there. And you can contact any one of us.
So if anybody has any issues with the agenda or anything, just there'll be the contacts there. So just get a hold of them. Even when Morgan's on a cruise, he gets back to you. So
Yeah.
Still honeymooning?
I told him to get back to his vacation a few times last week. He was like, "How are you replying to this quick?" "Oh, I'm just on the boat."
He just doesn't want to deal with it when he gets back because it
Well,
just
that's the
comes
thing,
out,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
quick and easy. Get rid of them.
One thing I learned is you can't trust the internet in Cuba. Cuba's got itself
Or
locked
on a
up pretty
cruise,
good.
it's bad.
There's a lot of things in Cuba I wouldn't trust.
No, I had
Got to watch the
email
Winter
in Cuba. I might have to go to Cuba. That sounds relaxing.
Yeah, well, that's probably the only place that wouldn't be online.
Yeah.
You can get online, but it goes through Montreal. You find out when you get home.
Oh, really? Oh, didn't know
Or on a cruise ship, it's brutal. The internet's just brutal.
that. Yeah, it's slow. Text and email is basically all it's good for.
I didn't think to take my iPad on a vacation.
I like being
my phone.
connected.
It takes really good pictures.
Especially the new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brand new
it's got a
cameras and
good
those
camera
ones.
there.
It is true though. You end up way too far behind. I can't not bring my phone on vacation.
Oh,
Or else I
yeah.
come back to like 1,300 emails in the morning.
Yeah.
some lunches. So
Okay, so
Do we have time to do it? Do you have any questions? Like, you want to do a quick overview of the agenda and what
we did
features
that.
are in? We did that with each one? Okay, perfect.
So-
If there's questions, obviously, let us know. And yeah, we'll get you the contacts sometime next week or so.
Yeah, and can you just let them know they're loaded up, preloaded with a few documents, so you want to just, they know how to do all that? Good, excellent, perfect.
Yeah, so we went through the council documentation, email correspondence, agenda, some various things that on the website.
Perfect,
And
excellent.
if you guys have more documents, either of you that you want added, we'll just append them to that website, and then you don't have to send them around. You don't it just show up. So.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Perfect.
I just have one last question.
Yep.
So the returning counselors, you actually got a new iPad today.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you not be able to use your old iPad
For the same, for
for this term? Yeah.
It's old, unreliable at that point, probably not as fast as it should be, and then we don't have that level of control to ensure information security and all that kind of stuff. So.
And if that wasn't a decision made by, that we would replace them after 4 years. Just because there was issues with various ones at different times, so it's better to start everyone off with a fresh, brand new iPad, so we know exactly what's there. There's better controls now than the first round when we set them out, so like I said, if you want to add anything, you need to let everybody know you're adding stuff, so.
Thank you.
And after a couple of years, if we were still using the old iPads, we wouldn't be able to update them anymore. So to make sure that you folks have a 4-year term that's seamless and we can ensure that you are safe and secure from a technology perspective, we replace them every 4 years. And that's even good for stuff 4 years. The further behind you get, the slower they are, the less productive people tend to be, and the more
downtime we have.
more downtime you have. So, and then they're not as secure as they should be.
And I know with mine, sometimes it would load a simple report, and I thought, oh, it must be something I'm doing. But Jennifer, just a one-page report, and it loading, and it never did come up. So,
It could be a couple of reasons.
Hopefully the new one does that.
yes, hopefully.
Yes, let me know. And I looked at the last time on the old one, and so hopefully the new one fixes that. So.
So if there is no other questions, I think we have lunches ready.
Yep. I just
And
grab it.
so we're going to recess until 1 o'clock then. So a motion to do that.
I'll move.
Councillor Clark, and Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Cool. Do we have a motion to reconvene?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's pretty much 1 o'clock, so a motion to reconvene. Councillor Clark and Councillor Brody. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. So on our agenda, we're at our 1 o'clock portion, which is the strategic plan review and visioning session. And we've received a lot of information and some homework from Kathy. So Kathy and I have discussed kind of what the plan is, and I'll throw it over to Kathy. And I think the first thing we're going to do is look at the current strat plan from kind of the bottom up.
Correct.
Yes. If that makes sense to everyone, and I think it will once we get into that. So, Kathy.
Yeah. So before starting the strategic plan review, I would just like to advise council that this is your opportunity as the 2018-2022 council to collectively establish the path for the township of Adelaide Metcalfe. Your thoughts and ideas for the long-term health and prosperity of Adelaide Metcalfe are being sought. The strategic plan, once approved, will be another tool for staff to use in providing advice and recommendations to council and carrying out council's decisions. The intent of this exercise is to be a broad spectrum review of where council would like the municipality to be at the end of this term. You are laying a foundation for staff. I acknowledge and understand that during the campaign period you may have received comment and feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, on many aspects of the township, including employees. I would like to recommend council, or to remind council of their duty to uphold the code of conduct, as this meeting is an open session. Discussion today is to gather your thoughts and ideas in order to establish priorities and tasks. There is no wrong answer. Following today's session, I will take back the discussions and begin compiling a document to reflect council's direction. This is a high priority item. In realistic terms, a draft of the strategic plan could be available for the January 21st meeting for council's review. That's agreeable? Okay. So probably our first step, we should go through your homework first. I think that would be the most, just to gather some of your ideas and get some comments on what we circulated. So the strategic plan review visioning session. The first question that we put to you was to identify 3 or 4 things that you most enjoy or are meaningful to you about living in Adelaide Metcalfe, or where you feel the township's greatest strengths and assets. So if anybody has anything they'd like to put out there as kind of, this was based on what we did in 2015 to gather information from not only council, it went to staff, and it was out as a general public survey to all of the ratepayers. So we're just trying to identify to make sure that your thoughts and ideas about where you're going are the same as what it was in 2015.
Just to make sure, Betty, did you get the email from Kathy?
No, I was going to say, I didn't have that one.
Okay. Because I noticed you don't have that. You didn't have that open. So.
No. Let me get my tablet. Oh, the emails will be on one thing.
So you have the emails
It's
on
gotta be
that.
on that one. Oh, there's only one on. You stuck on
Those
that
questions, the
I
1,
just
2, 3,
went-
4, those questions.
Yeah, I just went to my
It's
email.
from Kathy's
Yeah,
first
that
email.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the very first email that I sent.
This stuff, this stuff here. Yeah.
Yeah.
You received it, Mary? Mike, did you receive it? Okay. Okay. Well, Betty is looking for it. Sue, you wanted to start?
I just have one comment that I've thoroughly read the strategic plan, and I think that the points that were raised previously are still relevant, and I don't see any need to change those. There's no comment. I think they're still valid.
You're on with the 3 to 4 things you most enjoy, or what? Okay.
Yeah, just the number one.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything that wasn't in there that struck me as needing to be added particularly.
Yeah, when I read it over, it was, a lot of, some stuff has been happening, some hasn't, but, I mean, to go and rewrite it, I think the theory and the groundwork's there. Like, I don't, it's not like we have to rewrite it all.
I'm on the same page. I think it was a good basic footprint for us to start to advance further into it and apply some of the, like Morgan discussing the SWIFT. And that was one of my things I put in here, that maybe we should be contacting Brook Telecom to see if they would expand ExploreNet into Adelaide Metcalfe, because in my area of the municipality, there's poor computer. Like, there's hardly any, you can't get Rogers because it won't come up.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood. I'm saying as it
Yeah.
relates to number 1 point,
Number one.
I'm saying
Yes.
that
The strengths that were in
basically,
the appendix are still.
like if
the
you're going
strengths that you see
line by
today.
line, I still see the strengths, so I didn't
Yeah.
know if you want us to expand on that, but
No.
there's just a bullet point, I'm good with what that
Yeah.
says. Okay.
So the question is, Betty, and you have it in front of you. So it's identify 3 to 4 things that you most enjoy or are meaningful to you about living in Adelaide Metcalfe, or what you feel the township's greatest strengths and assets.
Basically being a rural community and what we have here, the mixture of business, residents, and, you know.
That's one thing I just jotted some chicken notes here, but you know, being close to Strathroy, we got good growth potential. We got a good base. I think financially, from what I hear, we're in decent shape. I didn't think I did all that just yet.
I think also our proximity to all the larger urban centers as well, not just Strathroy, but we're in a great spot, you know, between Sarnia and London, even close proximity to the border, as well as our 402 access.
So conversely, what are 3 or 4 of your greatest concerns or weaknesses that you have about the township of what needs to be improved upon, which is the concerns, issues, and weaknesses section?
Those are still the same. Internet, natural gas, water in some areas.
And the roads charge it. I have before.
Sue?
I think some of our concerns are providing safe walkways on the Pikeside Road, on Napperton specifically, and along 81 Highway. I was recently approached by some ratepayers on 81 Highway and advised that a petition was presented to council last summer or something like that, and I told them that I would bring that up today, that that's something that we need to consider in the strategic plan, is the safe walkways or a sidewalk or something of that nature. I personally have almost hit someone on Napperton, I'm embarrassed to tell you, and if you've walked along 81 Highway, they use the shoulder as an extra lane. And then during the election period, I walked those roads and they're not real comfortable. The other thing is, in the previous strategic plan, it was mentioned, there was some discussion about property standards, and I think we've all been on the same page saying that we need to improve things in Kerwood, and the ratepayers are concerned about that. And to that end, I would like, and maybe this is or not, I'm not sure if this is the right place to mention it, that possibly at our next council meeting that there be an agenda item added that we strike a property standards committee, and possibly we can have a discussion then, but engaging a community member on that committee.
If I may, a property standards committee is required under a property standards bylaw, but the purpose of that committee is a different aspect. It's to go after any, provide an appeal for anyone who's been provided with a notice that they have to clean up.
Okay,
So there
then
is a
perhaps
property
we-
standards committee that is the committee of council.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then we would have to strike a new committee that would be some sort of committee that is engaged to present to council some of their concerns within the community. Is that what you're suggesting?
No. So what it is what we're doing, we have discussed this, Jennifer and Jeff Denemy, our CBO, are currently looking at our property standards bylaw so that we can get an up-to-date. Our bylaw currently is a 2002 bylaw. So it's well out of date and it needs to be brought up to state standards. It also doesn't provide for clear and definite repercussions. So when you get a notice, what happens next? So right now our bylaw, everything has to go through the courts. So you know how quickly that moves. So our problem is we serve them with a notice, they come to council, they appeal their whatever it is, or they agree to it, whatever. So then Once that happens, it goes to, if they don't comply with that order, then it has to go off to the courts, and it goes through the court system, so it could be a years long, prolonged process. So we're looking at bylaws that, because other municipalities are able to take that proactive action and have things done, so why can't we be in that same situation? So we're taking our current bylaw, looking at what are people doing out there in the other communities, and how come we can't do that too? So we have a proactive bylaw that sets out exactly what's going to happen. So people know, you come in, you don't comply, here's what's gonna happen. 30 days after that, we do appeal, or this is what's gonna happen, so that we can move forward.
Or they're
so
given
once
a
that
chance to,
revised
yeah.
bylaw comes along, then it will come back to council for review and adoption, and it will be then up to the property standards officer to enforce the bylaw.
So I guess I'd like some consideration to be made that when you're revising those bylaws, if it's between Jeff and Jennifer, that there be something addressing surplus derelict vehicles, buildings that are
That
not
is part
safe
of the
and all
bylaw.
of
Yeah,
that.
we have two. We have our tidy yard bylaw, which deals with long grass, garbage, junk, that kind of stuff, and then the property standards, which deals with the standards of your building, outside buildings, derelict vehicles on properties, anything else under that matter. Yeah, so they do deal with them, they just aren't efficient because of the age of the bylaw, and we have not taken any action. There's been a will to take action previously to get these bylaws up to date, and it's always been, well, that's fine. And so we have the will to proceed with them as per current standards, not go through the course to send it on to a lawyer and say, you deal with it, so.
Okay, so do we have bylaws in place right now that have enough teeth to execute the action, or
We have
you're
bylaws
saying we
that
have to tidy those up and bring them more current?
We have bylaws that we can execute upon, but again, it goes to, once we've served the notice and they've had their appeal period, if they don't comply, it has to go to a solicitor for court action to be taken.
Okay. Never easy.
Yeah,
Like,
there has to be.
That's not gonna be, that'll be.
So then, we can't
there-
have a property standards, so the property standards as it applies right now is just to say how we're gonna action against people that haven't complied then. It's not to bring forth a committee of sorts that's going to say, okay, these are the issues in the township, how do we address those?
Right, we do
So
have
who
to
does
have-
that then? We do, because
Through the bylaw, it sets the standards of what is acceptable, so.
right, but it almost seems counterproductive to, we're only gonna action if people complain. And yet, there's some properties in Kerwood right now that if it's from a safety standpoint, if a kid gets in there and starts playing around and a building collapses on them, we could be involved because we've not actioned it in an appropriate time manner. So that's my
Yeah,
concern.
but
That's
the
a
problem
safety.
with that is you get into two situations is, number one is if you start taking action against the same person over and over again, they can complain that you're picking on them. So it's always been a complaint-driven bylaw. So if someone complains from the community, they have an interest in complaining, so that there's a reason for us to go ahead. It's not just a generic, oh, well, everything's a mess here and we want it cleaned up, because everyone's perspective on what junk is and what a mess is different. So we have to have those specifics in our bylaw that says this is our threshold of what we consider to be acceptable. Once you go past that threshold, then it's not acceptable. That's what we have to get established on what our thresholds are.
Because I know in some municipalities, if you're only allowed a certain number of cars per property, and then the fact that they're not plated is a whole other conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think if they're able to do that in other municipalities, we should be able to do something here.
Yes.
So I guess we have to amend the bylaws to.
Our first step is to
accommodate
get a
that.
bylaw that we can actually look at and say, yes, we know exactly what we're going to do. So that we're universally applying it to, so it's not, okay, well, this guy, he's only had stuff out there for 2 weeks, but this guy's been there for 20 years. But we go take action against this guy for 2 weeks, but what about this guy that's had the stuff piled up behind before?
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that it's a universal bylaw that can be applied any time, any place, so.
Okay, so when we're voicing what we want included in this strat plan, so are these going to get a ranking of A, B, C, where A is something that should be done within the next 180 days, B is within the next 6 months, and C is within the next 24 months or something? Are we gonna do a timeline on that so that we have a plan to work towards?
So-
We prioritize A, B, and C, but generally by year, because it takes a long time to go through the bylaws and then have it approved by, we like to have a solicitor review it just to make sure we're not going to go outside of law in any case, and then to get them in place. But yeah, it gives a timeline to have these things done, so we at least know when these things are going to be completed, so we're not dragging things out and those kind of things. But property standards is probably a high priority bylaw because it has been overdue for so long. Tidy yard as well, because it goes hand in hand on what immediate actions can be taken as opposed to having to proceed under property standards for everything. So those two bylaws need to be reviewed in concurrently, so that one satisfies short-term needs like grass, garbage, that kind of stuff, and the long-term, the bigger item ones like the derelict vehicles, the junk, the dilapidated houses, and those kind of buildings.
Okay.
So just before you move on from that, with the bylaw then, is the idea to still have it so that it's complaint driven?
Yes.
And so we don't have the issue of, we have the new bylaw in place, and then we have the issue of somebody complaining with the person that had something only there for 3 weeks, whereas there's somebody that's been there for 10 years. After we get the bylaw in place, should we not, as a council or a staff, go out, do a drive through the municipality and say, these are the properties that we need to bring up to standard, and then get those cleaned up and then move on to complaint basis on them?
Problem with that is it will take up a lot of time. Our property standards officer is also our CBO building inspector, so it's whether you want to dedicate him full time to doing property standards, because it will take up most of his time to follow up on these things.
Well,
there's a lot of properties and a lot of time, so it is that time factor on whether council wants to prioritize his as that, or does he work on building services? Because it's a one person.
Right, well, maybe council would have to consider hiring someone for 90 days on a contract to go out and make this a defined project for a defined period to initiate it, and then, it's going to be hard to manage no matter what you do.
So if I may though, it is part of the job description of that position, so we have to be very careful with making sure that we don't interfere with the jobs that he's been assigned. So.
Okay.
And we can talk more about that.
That would be an HR issue.
That would be an HR issue that we could discuss.
One of the other things that was brought up, and I was not aware that there was a meeting in Kerwood apparently at some time, and I'm not sure when the date that was, about one of the ratepayers doesn't want to have a whistle when the train goes through the Pikeside Road, and apparently there was a meeting in Kerwood where this was discussed.
I got that phone call.
Yeah, if I may, it was brought up at the 2014 council debate night, and then the same person, I'm assuming, came. He has attended council at least twice and sent in one letter about having the whistle not blow at Pike and Napperton, and council has addressed that previously.
Okay.
At the time, the decision was at the time was that because we have other crossings as well, do we do it just for one crossing, or do we look at all crossings? And then if we look at all crossings, then how do you determine when the whistle should blow or shouldn't blow? Ministry of Transportation, the Federal Transport Board regulates it, so is it something that council wants to take any liability on in having that whistle not blow when it comes to a crossing?
Okay.
We did have some money put aside for the engineer costs. This was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and the report didn't actually come back to us.
They said they were all of our crossings are in compliance with Transport Canada, but they didn't come back with the recommendation whether it should have more work done on it to be able to have that whistle not blow.
Yeah.
Well, because no one's going to want to step up to assume that liability, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue, is that your answer to number 2 so far?
I guess one of the questions I have when we start talking about sidewalks, is there any way maybe Curtis can speak to, Mayor Smith can speak to this, is through the county. For example, on Napperton Road, if there's a kid riding a bike down the road there and they're walking, I guess is a better example, and gets hit by a car, and if I'm the one driving the car and I have no insurance, then they're going to go to the 1% rule, and the county will get sued, and the township will get sued. So is there any overlap there? Like, even though that's probably going to be on, if we were able to go ahead and do sidewalks, it would be on the municipality property, but you know, the liability piece reaches out to them too. So is there any reason why they can't pay for some of this?
Likely because it's not a county requirement.
Yeah.
They don't have sidewalks as part of their, they don't look after the residents of the township, they look after the road, but not the residents, where this council is more for the residents as opposed to the other way around. So again, that's something that's never been discussed at great length, whether that is a priority for council. So sidewalks are a priority, that's something we need to get into our strategic plan, so our budget and asset management reflect that this is something that we want to start happening.
I think it's something that we really need to, even to start, like pick a Napperton where the old age home is, and that's a tight space.
Like even do it even in stages.
Oh, I think it'd have to be in stages.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we really need to start addressing. And to me, one big challenge is snow removal. Can you get an agreement with Strathroy, because they have the equipment to just go down farther? I mean, that's something that has to be.
I would actually like to see that as part of the new, like we have to redo that agreement with them. That
That's
we
something
couldn't
that would
throw
happen
the
almost,
snow removal.
Well, that's what I said
sidewalks.
at the ordinance meeting. I think
Because
we
how
should
can we
incorporate
do it
that.
otherwise? How can we maintain that?
So with just going back to the liability thing, so the township looks after anything beyond the curb and gutter is kind of what the thought is. So anything beyond that is the township's responsibility. So if we want to do sidewalks, we want to do streetlights or anything like that, that's our responsibility. And then with the agreement, I'm assuming Kathy's going to answer that, but in short, the servicing agreement is about the sewer and water on Highway 81, and that's it.
It's not about
Because we don't have any sidewalks or pathways to service right now, so that's why it's not in the agreement.
Most agreements work better when it's about a single topic as opposed to a mishmash, because when things change, you have to review everything as opposed to just the one part that's.
But even a service fee to it, I mean, we know
Yeah,
we
that's
have to
okay.
do it.
Yeah.
That's fine. What would it be? Because for us to go and buy equipment for a little bit of stretching, that's not going to be feasible. Period.
Yeah, and I was.
So they charge us so much to do it. So be it. I mean, it's
I was really hoping to get into the county cycling strategy, because I know they're looking at bike paths. And if you could put in a bike lane and a walking strip on the same piece of,
And the county would be.
well, then we could share it.
Yeah.
That to me would be but I don't know if their cycle paths are intended to go where we need the sidewalks. But
I'll look that up right now.
Yeah.
But
No,
again,
that was my thought as well, to rather than a sidewalk, do a bicycle path which has no seam
or
so-
put a yellow line on it,
yeah,
like they do in the cities. That we just
and possibly the county.
like no bikes painted on it every once in a while, and
problem would be in the winter, does the plow slide over far enough to
Wow.
clean it up?
if they bike in the winter, it's at their own risk.
Well, because the health unit, did we not all get an email saying to encourage a healthy, safe environment in your community? So I mean, this is promoting health as well, right? So.
Okay. Just a suggestion. Why don't we go through everyone's list of what their answers were, just kind of the bullet points of what their weaknesses, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Weaknesses are, and then we'll kind of touch on them all, because I'm assuming some of them will be duplicated.
Yep, I got
Yeah.
a few of the nuclear.
So we had the bylaw enforcement, sidewalks, and I forget what else you were saying, Sue. Enforcement, sidewalks.
The whistle, the
Whistle.
whistle thing. Also, the flooding, like if you went by the Kerwood Park yesterday, there's a drainage problem in the front. And whether it needs to be part of a strategic plan, to me, it's pretty basic. You either get the road guys in there and fix the tile, or call Ralph on and it's all over in a day. Like, this doesn't need to keep going on and on. Just
If
craziness.
I may, we are aware that there's a drainage problem, that they located the tile last year,
Okay.
but due to the season and people being on the ball fields and stuff, they didn't want to rip up the ball field at the time, so it will get repaired, and it will have to be looked at in conjunction with what we're planning for the park, so that the drain is, if it needs to be relocated, it's relocated in the spot where it's not going to interfere with any future development there.
Okay.
Yes, the public works manager has it on his radar to get that fixed, but he just didn't fix it at the end of last year because they were still using the ballpark, and there's a couple of events that happened there in the fall, so he didn't want to rip it up and have a mess for them.
Mike, you had already sidewalks, and what else did you have on?
I had ballpark too. We need to, on the strategic plan, are we gonna invest some money into that ballpark? You know, what's been set aside for that? Building wise, you know, with the hall's gonna close in Kerwood, church gonna close in Kerwood. I mean, I think that's gonna need to be high on our agenda to look at that. Cause that's gonna take time to.
So, like a community building?
Yeah,
Or hall?
I'm not thinking of big, I'm thinking very small, but
The
you know,
size of the
old barn.
basement.
Yeah, basically the old barn's there, it's junk, it's old, I mean, something's gotta happen there, there's been money's put aside, I think that needs to be in our strategic plan for sure.
So just for clarification, there was monies received, and then Kathy, did you not send out for request for proposal and nobody,
We did,
nobody
no one did on
responded?
it, so we're reissuing
Wow.
those, so.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so you've done something, but
We've done,
there's.
yeah.
you've
It didn't,
done
yeah,
well.
it's been kinda in the works, but I think
Yeah.
we need to keep moving ahead with that. Yeah, I just continued, whatever our budgets are in tar and shipping road to certainly keep
Yeah, the road's
continuing.
up with another thing, sorry.
Then one other thing I had was just to look at the severance rule. What it would, like, I'm all for the severances, I'm all for the excess farm levies, but I'm also all for, which I don't think has been happening, like non-farm, or how do I say that, but basically when you have a spot like Napier and there's no agricultural, it'll never be able to be agricultural use. What's wrong with severing some more bush like if somebody has, I just want to look at
Hamlets.
more hamlet severing,
Yeah.
you know, because I don't think those rules are there right now, correct?
It's all in the zoning, but yeah.
Most of those rules are governed by the provincial policy statement, so if it's agricultural land of any form, we have a very difficult time getting it going
And I
up against the
agree with
provincial
that.
policy, so, it may be that no one's applied for those
Right.
severances, because we do have, that's there, anything
Okay.
that's already eligible to be done. If it's within the policy framework, they can go ahead and do those type of things, it's
Yeah.
just anything, you can't sever, acreage just to have a retirement lot. So
Right.
anything's just creating a lot from acreage will not happen,
Right.
because it's against the provincial policy, so,
But what I think Mike's talking about is more expanding the urban area of the hamlets.
Napier.
Of the Adelaides, the Kerwoods, the Napier Walkers, Karen Moore,
Exactly.
those
If we
ones.
want growth,
Maybe even deal,
there's,
coming around.
yeah.
Yeah. And that was one thing that I did note as one of my concerns or weaknesses, that we are severely overdue for our township official plan and zoning bylaw reviews. We went to the county services, and due to county changes, we've been pushed back for 2018, so we're highly encourage them to get our official plan done in 2019, the zoning bylaw in 2020, so we have those in place. And that's the time where you look at areas that have that potential growth areas, and we could be able to amend our plan so that we can encourage those types of changes in those areas.
Yeah, that's basically, mine was like meeting space. I mean, there isn't, we don't use this hall, and basically what the community needs and doesn't have is a place where you can go and have a meeting for 30 or 40 people tops. Even like if we have a township meeting, we can do it downstairs, but I mean we have issues with the water, which boggles my mind anyway, why there isn't water here, but
There is water, we have lots of water, it's just you can't drink it. It's not,
peroxide.
it's not come back with negative E. coli or anything, but it hasn't come back with the most positive results.
No,
either.
because it's the same water that's in that barn, it just needs a peroxide unit basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but, I got a meeting space, sidewalks, and that's kind of what I had to.
Okay, before we go back to Sue, Betty Ann?
Yeah. I'd like to see us contact North Middlesex and see about extending water down to Kerwood. From their connection point, that might be easier than dealing with Strathroy if we're going to be in competition with Strathroy to develop residential units in the Kerwood area. And I know it's going to be expensive, but maybe we could be the broker for the ratepayers and just put it through a debenture, and a lot of people will want to buy a debenture now because we can offer better interest rates because the ratepayers will be paying it back.
Yeah, so I actually had the water thing down as well, but you've already elaborated on that. The other thing, I know we're restricted by the county when it comes to severing property, but I'd like to see, and I mean, we're gonna have to push to the county for this, and not everyone's gonna agree with me on this, is something whereby there's estate lots. Because the value of farms are so expensive now, anybody who is farming and buying more land is a pure farmer, as far as I'm concerned. So you have people that are retired, they're living on parcels of land, they're a little bit bigger. There are in some counties where, on the eastern part of London, as you go out of London, if you are living on one side of the road, you can have your barn and your house severed off and have that as an estate lot, but if you live on the other side of the road and you're in Middlesex County, you have to burn that barn down to get that severance, which makes, so I think that I would like to see some sort of estate lot where you can have a hobby farm of some kind. So that's the nice to, whether that's even achievable, we would have to put that to the county. But there are some counties where that is allowed and they're not that far from us.
There again, it would be under our official plan review.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And again, we would have to get the province to approve it, and the province is the ones that are saying minimal agricultural severances.
But in some counties, they do that. So
Yeah, it
they've
could
got
be that
approval
the-
provincially, so.
It could be location related, not necessarily the provincial policy started in 2014.
Okay.
So if it was something that was in existence before, that may be part of why they're able to do this, but it is a provincial policy, and our bylaw conforms to the provincial policies, so.
I think we've been behind on this.
Yes,
severance
for
stuff,
years
for
we
sure,
have, yeah.
guarantee, because I even know in Caradoc, like you can sever off a house off a 50-acre parcel, right? I know guys that have done it. So we are certainly behind other.
Yeah, we don't have the restriction in our policy, there is no minimum size requirement, which is a case in a lot of municipalities, it's 100 acres, and you have to have 98 acres minimum.
Oh, we don't have that now.
We don't
We used
have
to.
that in our severance policy. Our zoning bylaw still says a parcel is 100 acres.
Yeah.
But when we did our official plan amendment to allow surplus farm building severances, we didn't specify a minimum retained lot size.
Oh, okay.
Only because on the south half of the township, the Metcalfe side, the township properties don't always add up. They're not always 100 acres because of the layout of the township. So it was accommodated that way. So we do surplus farm building severances on smaller
Oh,
parcels
okay.
as well.
That's
And
my
it's also
understanding.
because a house that's surplus is surplus no matter if it's on 100 acres or 40 acres or whatever it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
It
sense.
was too constraining to say you had to have that minimum 100 acres to start to be able to get it there. So when we reviewed it, it was taken out, and it was, you don't have a minimum final number. Same, likewise, it also doesn't have a minimum maximum size, or a maximum size, I don't know. So we don't also restrict people to a maximum size, they just have to be able to justify why they want that size, and it's not impacting farmland.
Yeah, that's.
Because we have had a few severances that are larger than our typical 1 acre parcel, and they are significantly larger, but they're able to justify it by the fact that there is no agriculture taking place in that area right now anyway.
Oh, okay, that's how you get it, okay.
Yes.
Sorry. So the other things on my list that were brought up prior to the election, and I'm sure that a lot of this will be covered under property standards, is, or maybe not, I don't know what this would come under, is in Kerwood there's an excess of cats running around. That's a concern. In Cairngorm, there is a building there was a house fire there a while ago, and I drove by there yesterday just to get an idea if there had been any movement. The only movement is there's now a car with no license plates parked in the laneway, which doesn't fix the problem, it makes it worse. But anyway, that I'm not sure where that is, and if that's a property standards issue or if that's a fire marshal issue or a combination of both, I don't know, but the neighbors have had enough. That place is going to have to be leveled. There's no living room, the whole ceiling's caved in. It's a hell of a mess.
Probably some fight with insurance.
And that's a nice, and I'm sure they're in a fight with the insurance company or whatever, but at the end of the day, there should be a defined period of time where that has to be fixed. Where this has gone on for way too long. I sit on an insurance board, it would never go on this long. Ever. There's a 12-month resolution, and if it's not resolved in 12 months, action happens. So this has been going on for longer than 12 months, I gotta think. Or close to it, or coming up. It'll be coming up, yeah.
So before we go, let's address those issues as they come up. So
sure.
So the excess cats, we've had a multitude of delegations at council and discussions at council. There's really nothing we can do about cats.
But dogs, we have the dog catcher.
We have a dog catcher because generally dogs can be tagged because people, have responsibility. People don't take responsibility for their cats. They open the door and let them run. The health unit has investigated. We've had all kinds of, the OSPCA has been out there. There's not much we can do about the cats. So that's a very unfortunate thing, but we've had animal control here. They presented to council and just said, we can go out there and they can have them live trapped and take them. The problem is there's an overabundance at every shelter. Cats are a problem everywhere, so they're so full, they're not even taking them. So the best thing to do for people is do not feed them and do not warm them. And they will go away, nature will take care of them, and they will find other places to live.
Okay.
And then the Cairngorm, again, that goes back to, has someone registered a complaint, we would take action. So if there's a house with a burned out roof, there's a property standards issue. So if we have received a complaint, we would have to take action, even under our current bylaw, because we do have requirements under that bylaw that if something doesn't have a ceiling, it's a property standards concern. So why isn't anybody taking action? We would go after the owners to say something needs to be done, you need to rectify the situation.
Okay.
Just before we go though, but could we not have it so then with that, so the municipality knows there's a fire there, there's obviously a fire call, there should be some kind of chain of action from our fire department to the bylaw enforcement to make sure that it's dealt with.
Unfortunately, privacy acts come into play and they can't discuss that. It's all about privacy.
Even from a safety standards?
Even from a safety standards, it's a privacy issue.
Yeah.
Because basically, it'd be their lot, their insurance, their
That's
safety
right. It's up to
concerns, right? I
them.
mean, that's up to them.
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's
but
not
you've
up
got
to, that won't be
raccoons
up to
running
us.
around, yeah.
Good.
But I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is, that's a nice street, those people pay a good amount of taxes and.
All it takes is one phone call to the office.
Okay,
And
so
we
they
will
need to do
have
that.
them, we will submit them with the proper form that we have. We do have a form, a complaint form here at the township office.
Okay.
We do like to see either an email with, somehow we can identify who it is that's complaining. Like if an email address comes in and it says Mr. Salty 202, we can't identify that from someone, but if it came in msalt@gmail and then they sign Michael Salt, then we'd say, okay, yes, this is a legitimate person. We can identify it based on our tax roll or something. We would know somehow to identify that person. Then we would take that form. It's kept confidential. It's whoever receives it. It's either the clerk or myself. We would take a copy of the report to our CBO, Property Standards Officer, and say, you need to go out and take pictures, get an investigation going, find out what's going on.
At least then you know if, okay, it's a month ago, we're tied up
Exactly.
in court
Yes.
against their insurance company, and we'll have an answer in a month.
We make contact
you
with
know
them,
what-
send them a letter, say, hey, what's going on with your property? We've identified you have a problem, you have a hole in the roof, there's been a fire, nothing's happened, we have concerns, please respond by this date.
Yeah.
They respond, they say, oh, listen, I'm having trouble with my insurance, getting it cleared up. We need another month. The CBO has some discretion there to say, fine, on this day I grant you 30 more days. I need to see some action by that day. Then they can also come to the Property Standards Appeal Committee, which is council, and appeal to the council to give an extension of whatever council feels appropriate. And then that goes on from there, and then they have a deadline again, and then if they don't approach that deadline under our current bylaw, once they've extended that deadline, then we would send it off to our solicitor. Say, listen, these guys aren't responding, take action for us. And they would take whatever appropriate action the solicitor deems next.
Another issue that was raised is the concern that there's commercial operations going on in residential areas. So I'm not sure if that's a bylaw, how that's addressed. I know in the past in Kerwood, several years ago, there was a similar situation, and the people felt they couldn't get any answers from the council, so they called the Ministry of the Environment, and that business is no longer functioning. So I'm not sure if there's any crossover between the township and the ministry or how that would work. And then another point for the strategic plan is prior to or during the election period, I did quite a bit of reading, and the lifespan of our landfills, there's a defined time as to when they have to be closed. So I think we need in the strategic plan to have something in place to say, how are we addressing this? What's our timeline? And what's the game plan? Because those, like 2019 is here. So I think one of them is next year, is it not? Like on the,
Yes.
yeah, so I mean that is we have to address that. Yeah, and continuing the tar and chip program, I think that's important. I know there's ratepayers on Innerville that are hoping that that's their next on the list and would like to know where that is.
Okay, yeah.
Just adding to what Sue was adding about Innerdale, I think it would be nice if we contacted Southwest Middlesex, given that they'll be responsible for 50% of that road, and get the discussions flowing and give them a timetable as well for budgeting so that it goes smoothly.
So would they be assessed, like would they get, that would be a portion to them, some of that cost?
We have an
Like from the
agreement with them
roads?
that we maintain part of the road and they
And they do
maintain
the
the other part, and so when it comes to construction, we have to go back to the agreement and see what it says. If one takes the lead in the construction and builds the other one, or if we work jointly and we do our section and they do their
Yeah,
section,
cause that
so.
could not be in their budget for 2 or 3 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one thing, when it does come to the tar and chip roads, I know we identified that the untarred and unchipped road was a potential loss in gravel and ongoing maintenance costs. Council needs to remember that even though we're hard surfacing roads, there is still maintenance that needs to be done, and although you're not an annual maintenance, in a 5 to 7 year period, your costs are again much higher than what you would spend over those 4 years on an improved road. And it also changes our needs in terms of equipment and what we need for equipment, because when you start getting hard surface roads, you need more trucks, you need sand and salt storage, which brings to another point, whereas once we start having tar and chip roads, the grader can only go north and south instead of east and west. So it changes a lot of the dynamics of maintaining those roads as well for those type of things. So something to consider. It's about $1.2 million to chip tar and chip 3 blocks of any road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of money every time. So that's a big chunk of your budget. So it's another cost that council has to remember that that's there. And this is setting your policy for not only a strategic plan but for asset management, because if this is the policy you want to have with all roads, whether they be north and south or east and west, it does impact all of those other documents that we're going to come up with.
Okay. Just before we continue on, just because we're still technically on concerns and weaknesses, is there anything else for concerns and weaknesses for the township?
Well, one I want to bring up is just about, I have a little concern of the biosol stuff. Warwick's fighting it pretty hard right now. And there's been a property bought, but it's still in Warwick Township. They're having a big meeting this week or next. From what I hear, if it doesn't go well there, it's coming our way next.
But you know what I don't understand is if you fill out an unless these people are paying cash and don't need a mortgage, they have to fill out an environmental assessment, and if they're being honest on that and they're spreading biosolids on
No,
that.
it's not the spreading.
Oh, okay.
It's
Storing.
storing.
Even the storing.
I'm not worried about the spreading, because
Okay,
that's
but-
in on and gone. I'm worried about.
Well, the storage is bad.
It's because
But I'm
there's
just
a wet
saying,
fall.
a bank will not lend if you're storing biosolids on. So these people are either not being truthful to their bank, and their insurer would be quite upset as well. So I find this very interesting.
I suspect because it was such a miserably wet fall, it wasn't the intention to store it that long, and they got caught. Or they did bring it for storage. That is an issue then.
I think it was stored
I'm
really in
very
the spring
positive.
too.
Yeah.
Very positive.
Well, there was a property down off of Kerwood, just off of Calvert and Kerwood Road that was used for storage, and
That's
you could
where-
smell it
Well, that's
forever.
is the talk of next, because that would be the only.
Well, the stone is still there, I believe.
No, it's all
Has it gone now?
Okay, is there anything else for weaknesses or concerns at all? I just had a couple if I could. Already touched on some of them, so file enforcement, which we already talked about. Another concern is identity. So we've done a good job, I think, with our logo and that type of thing, but we just have to proceed with making sure we get the signs up there, making sure people know that, you know, who we are, you know, Adelaide Metcalfe, and they come into the community having that identity there, not only within the entire township, but also the urban areas and that type of thing. As well as inclusion of urban areas. I feel that the one concern that I have is that the mindset in the past has been very agriculturally driven, and we just have to be mindful of those residential developments in our municipality. So we've already touched on it with sidewalks and that type of thing, but just including those areas. And then the other concern that I have is accessibility, not only in the mindset of accessibility in the fact of, you know, wheelchairs and that type of thing, but also accessibility we're just talking about IT and even, you know, our building here, and we'll be talking about the hub as well later on, but the accessibility to information and website and everything else. So those are the main ones. And then just ones that have kind of popped up, which we've already talked about, is looking at our roads plan. So I think that's something that we need to do. I don't think we've really looked at what roads we will be paving. We did have a plan out there.
There's some ahead,
Yeah.
like I don't see anything, so I don't know what's on the agenda yet. Or
So I think we need to review that, make sure that makes sense, and look at approving that, as well as having our roads department look at our roads for snow removal. I know we just did the minimum maintenance standards, but we also should look at which roads, and I know Kathy's looking into the legal issues of it, of having it so there's no, you know, snow removal like maintenance on them, because there's some roads with no hedges on them, and we don't really, in my opinion, need to plow those roads. There's some of them there that we're plowing the roads for no reason. There's no farm buildings on them, there's no houses there, there's no need to travel down them, so that's something else that we can look at as well.
Yeah.
Okay. But again,
And I think another weakness that we have is economic development. We've relied on the county to do our economic development, and I don't think we've been high on their priority for that. So I'm thinking we should get an economic development committee here. I recommend CB on that.
okay. So is there anything else for concerns or weaknesses at all? Kathy, did you have anything that you had listed off at all?
No, mainly, well, I think that the impacts of the current severance policy, I think we can remove that because we do allow surplus farm building services,
Yes.
which have been positive for our community. I think that I'm hoping that this council supported it continuing, because I do think that economically you may not be initially seeing them, but in the next 2 to 3 years, we're gonna see the benefit from them with the retained tax assessment and residential assessment.
And I think the property standards too, right? The people
No, they're only gonna go up.
yeah, exactly.
Yes, we've got quite a few cleaned up through just having that requirement as part of getting a surplus farm going severances, that your property has to be clear. So it's cleaned up and they do tend to be in much better shape.
Okay, the next question, what is it there? So question number 3 on this questionnaire kind of thing is, what new or modified services or operational activities do you feel the township could/should prioritize over the next 3 to 5 years that would better meet the needs of residents, businesses, and overall community? Sure, Mike.
So one of the few complaints I got was needing faster answers, faster service. Had one guy call, said he had stuff in there for a drain, 6 months, no response. Like that was a big. I had probably 3 or 4 complaints of that nature. Stuff would come in and just not getting to the proper places.
So, is there a service level agreement here where if somebody calls up and says, the drain's not working in front of my place, like what's sort of the protocol in place right now? Like, for example, if you rent a house from me, I have a service level agreement that within 24 hours I get back to you, and within 48 hours the problem's fixed, or otherwise I come up with a solution. So what's the position on the township from a service level agreement?
We have nothing in writing. We do try to respond to people in a reasonable time frame. When it comes to drains, for example, our drainage superintendent's here Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so we leave the message for him, email and written, so he gets the message and then it's up to him to deal with it and move it forward.
So maybe there should be some consideration given to having some sort of policy in place for the service level expectations, and maybe 24 hours is too soon if the person doesn't work every day. That's just a personal thing, but there should be something in place so that we don't have people complaining that they called and nobody called them back and this, that, and the other thing, so that there's an expectation and the standard set.
Mike, what else is on your list there?
That was pretty much.
That's it.
Other stuff has been covered really already.
Okay, Marianne?
Well, my prioritization was, I kind of started with Kerwood and then I had kind of pretty close to like property standards, cleaning up, sidewalks, kind of had the property issues kind of in there, and that's as far as I kind of really went into it. But those are the areas where I think we should send our priorities.
Betty?
That's likely the area where we're going to recover most for our costs going in. But I'm still not convinced about sidewalks. I'd rather see one continuously.
Yeah, but I consider that a sidewalk. I don't differentiate.
Sidewalk, walkway, once we establish a path for people to be on, it's our responsibility. So what form it takes is secondary to establishing that we're going to provide this service.
Sue?
So I think we've touched on it prior to the start of the meeting today, is the high-speed internet. From an economic development, you can't run a business out here effectively, especially if it's time-sensitive stuff and not have a reliable internet connection. So until we get that looked after, or at least moving in the right direction, it's going to be very hard to attract business in that.
Or even residents.
Yeah, because and a lot of people do stuff from home now. They work from home, so. And from operational activities, I know in the previous strat plan there was discussion about, do you keep both yards open? I did a little loop around the parking lot before I came into the meeting today to see what you exactly store over here. It looks like it's just a little bit of gravel. My understanding is the salt comes from the county down there. So maybe there should be some thought as to amalgamating the yards. There's probably a geographic consideration, and I would yield to the road people for input from them. And then the other thing from an operational standpoint is I spent some time yesterday at the fire department and walked around the property. There's not a lot of extra land there, but maybe there should be some thought given to, if this is a surplus building here and you're having flooding issues and you can't drink the water, maybe moving things to the hub is the answer. And maybe there is room to add an addition onto the fire department, the existing station, and build up and out a little bit out the front. I don't know, I'm not an engineer or a building person, but those were just some of the things I was thinking of to increase the essence of having a hub in the center of the township. We're kind of restricted because there's not a whole lot of property there when you start looking at whether you have a community center or something, or if that's incorporated with the park, or I don't really know how you do that, but those are things we should think about. And that was the question, right?
Yeah.
Modify services are operational.
But yeah.
Expanding on Sue's point there, I as well looked at how we could get into the hub in the Kerwood area, and I was looking more at the 20 acres that's the wastewater, and see if we could do something around behind the fire department using that extra land we have. If we could, if that might be an opportunity
I don't think
to.
there's enough land there, is it?
I don't
20
think, and
acres.
you're at 25% capacity right now, my understanding is with the sewage, and if there's a longer term plan where you want to develop and make that, you're going to need that capacity for increased residents if that is the way that the
Probably
township
wouldn't be able
moves.
to do too much building outside the sewage anyway.
Yeah, no, because,
It's not a big deal spot.
no.
I wondered about talking with P&H and Menard and, I know there was property missed, like to purchase right there, but P&H does own the other, if there could be a movement of parcels, or not parcels, but basically if we know we needed 20 acres to build what we wanted, an office, a garage, or whatever, you'd have to have 3 people talk about how does that make that possible, right? Because I don't think P&H should be one that wants to keep all that land. They only want to keep what they need for future expansion, right? So they'll have a plan, I'm sure. That was my only thought of getting close to the hub, because there's really not much else.
No. And the problem is that there's barrier to entry, right? The price of land is
No,
so
it's-
dear. I mean, you have to look at your reserves and say how much are you
What's
prepared to,
feasible?
yeah, like what's realistic, so.
And then myself for the organizing for the next 3 to 5 years, some of the things that I jotted down was the sidewalks and having a plan for that, communication, which we hit on, but more specifically the website, as well as getting information out with, say, a subscription email list. We have the social media with the website, but a lot of people still rely on email and getting that pushed out to them. Other people do that. Enhancing our social media. Municipal water, so that's something that I really think we need to be looking at. If we want to expand our hamlet and village areas, we need to have both the sewer and water. We have sewer in Kerwood, but we need water there to really expand.
Is the sewer all paid? Like, is that all?
No.
The residents.
The residents.
The residents, some paid, most are on their taxes, I would think.
Yeah. That's what I mean, like, is that the next phase? Like, I know we did sewer how many years ago, like, you got that covered, or maybe now we gotta look at bringing in water.
And water gets more expensive
I'm
every
sure
year
it
you
will.
look at it.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
The municipality has no debt in regards to the actual Kerwood sewer treatment plant.
Right.
There is debt on behalf of the ratepayers for their connections,
Right.
but there is no debt assumed by the township. We have fully paid for our share.
Okay.
So I think that's something we really need to look at, because without it, I think, Kerwood, it's a great spot, it's a great location, and I think until we have the water service there, I don't think we're gonna see any real movement on growth at all. And then the next one, which we've already touched on, which we'll touch on more, the next sheet is the community hub. And making sure when we do that community hub, if we do that, getting it, more community events and that there. So I think that's a core priority as well. And then the next one there, what do you see as the biggest challenges and or priorities the township has in remaining a vibrant and vital community over the next 5+ years? So challenges and priorities.
Basically getting water to Kerwood and getting more growth and taxes.
The affordability of it with a small population base.
Yeah.
And really, if you do it, how much can it expand? Because everything around it is old. Like,
Well, unless you have somebody that's a farmer and you allow them to do a subdivision plan and then there's the cost of development is on them, right? But they're not likely to do that unless they can provide water, right? So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, that's just something you have to consider, right? So,
the other thing I thought was with the marijuana, that it's an opportunity for us to opt in. It's an agriculture-related business, and I thought we should be looking at opting in for the future.
Yeah.
so one of the other concerns I have is Doug Ford is continuing to download stuff onto the municipalities. So with that, we may end up with a lot more responsibilities. I know the Ontario Works, they're doing almost a Bill Clinton thing where you can be on welfare in the US for 2 years and after that you better get a job. So I think they're trying to move in that direction in Ontario, and my only concern is that that's just one example of stuff that's being downloaded, and there's going to be more and more stuff because they're going to try to reduce the administration, and unfortunately what that's going to do is increase your administration. That's what's going to happen because it has to go somewhere. So we either have to keep that in the back of our mind from a staffing standpoint, because everybody only has so much capacity. And I know you hear from out in the community that people think there's a lot of employees up here and people aren't doing anything or they're not doing enough, but at the end of the day, it's just like banking, it's like insurance and everything else. The compliance has gotten and the rules and the paperwork and the administration, that the township, as it was 20 years ago, is not the township it is now, whether it be this one or any other one. It's a new day, right? So I'm sure there's always room to look for efficiencies, but we also have to be aware that there may be more and more downloaded onto us in the coming years, in the short term even.
Okay, any other biggest challenges?
I think a challenge that maybe we don't see that I've actually become aware of through another channel is that, that when you travel through the township and you see all the abandoned cars and things, you don't know how many people are actually living in those vehicles.
Living in the vehicles?
There are people in this township living in vehicles.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like the social agencies in town are trying to take care of those people, but housing is an issue out here. So these aren't people that can afford to get a separate house, really. They're not paying their rent, that's why they're living in vehicles. So I think poverty in the township is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with, because you're talking about social services and the county looks after them, but I've just become aware of a couple in the last month or so. So when our property standards bylaw is coming in and we're cleaning up those cars, we have to be careful what we find out there.
And actually, the first one on my list was the rising real estate market, and that it's hard. It's a challenge because there's only so many people that can actually purchase property within the municipality, and
nobody wants to rent to people who can't afford to pay rent.
Yeah.
Well, traditionally, maybe you got a different sort of renter out in rural area because the price was not high, right? So,
some of the other challenges that I had was the reduction in government grants, and then just as a whole, our township compared to other ones, the lack of infrastructure that we have for residential and commercial development. So I know that we have, the sewer and water agreement on Highway 81, but it's good, but at the same time it's also restrictive because of the agreement. And then as I already said, with the water in Kerwood, we have the sewers that we don't have water, and then even here in Adelaide Village, we have neither service. So.
Can I ask a question? Kathy, you were kind enough to forward me a copy of a listing of all the properties that the township owns. And if I was looking at the map correctly, it almost looked like behind where Roman is up 81 Highway, is it a skinny strip back there? So I don't know how wide that strip is. Maybe it's bigger than it looks on the paper. So what is that good for? Like, is it good for a walkway to,
The council
or?
of the day purchased that. What I can gather from reading council minutes from the past, it was purchased in order to provide an access road. Strathroy wanted to buy it to develop a road back there, thinking that it would help service the back of those properties and 81, and this township bought it.
So it's wide enough for a road?
No, it's not.
No, okay.
It's very narrow. It's very small. What you see there is very small, and it's very challenged because that is a total ravine leading up to it. So there's very little flat land that actually could be a road. So,
Or even a walkway, but I mean, when you
Yes.
come out of Wyoming, there are a few dips and valleys
Yes.
there, so.
yeah,
So just because I don't think Kathy were
I was not here, but that was in
So-
2010, I believe it was purchased.
2011, I think.
2011, somewhere.
So Benny and I are the ones with the knowledge on this one.
Okay, oh, sorry.
So no, it's okay.
Yeah.
So the reason that was purchased was it's not for a road to go north and south. The idea for that was because Strathroy Caradoc was looking at extending that road coming from Strathroy Caradoc going west to 81. So there's the property that was formerly owned by Canadian Tire, which they were thinking the road would continue on. There's that whole narrow strip, which is not owned by either the residents on the Strathroy side or Canadian Tire. So the idea was to make things simpler. The township would buy that land, so then it's one less person to deal with for putting that road through.
Oh, okay.
That road is never probably going to go through because Strathroy and Caradoc did a road study and they decided that they don't need that road to go over to 81 because they did the subdivisions there in such a way that it either goes to 2nd Street or Head Street. So now council's left with a piece of property that we probably shouldn't have bought in the first place.
So one of the other things I'd like added to the strat plan is a discussion as to the longer term picture of property that the township owns. Like, I understand when I did a drive around, Crathie Hall is on there. So I know it's not, like, is there land plus the hall? And from a liability standpoint, how does our insurer feel about that we've got this old building there, and like, do kids go in and party in there, or is it
It's locked up pretty tight.
locked up? Yeah, but is there a better use for that land?
Yeah, I
So
like
I think it'd be nice to look at the holdings that the township has and say, are these good assets to keep on our books of business? Or should we be revisiting those and liquidate those and use that cash to pay for a sidewalk or something else?
And adding to that, we have an old road that goes through me and my neighbor's property, and we had sent a letter at one time into.
It's coming to the next
Is it
council.
coming? Okay.
Yeah.
But that's something that needs
No,
to.
that's a little different, that's a road allowance,
Yeah, that
we've
needs
dealt
to
with
be-
on a different
okay.
matter, but those are, again, we get into the whole wood
Getting
lot
rid of-
area and
yeah.
disposing of surplus property and
Mhm.
what's the process, so.
So do you have to circle the conservation authority in on that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do generally, just to make sure, we like to make sure that the county wood lot inspector is aware of this is happening, so he's aware, and we look at it, when we have those kind of requests, we have to look at it and say, is there any value in the township retaining it, and where is it located, and is it any value to the township, and if there's no
If
value
it's
to the
ever going to
township,
be used again.
then it comes back to, and again, it depends on, where is it and what is it, so we look at each one on a one-off situation.
Because I'm thinking, like, with Crathie too, like not you, but when we tender for grass cutting, for example, do they have to push them more around over on Crathie?
Well,
You know what I mean?
No,
I'm just saying
for
that.
example,
For example.
can we reduce our recurring expenses by disposing of property that's surplus to our needs?
Right, so, but I also look at it from a strategic planning too, is that there might be a piece of property that we don't see value today, but there could be down the road, but I would look at that like an asset of the township to say, is that an asset that has served its purpose, or is there potential for appreciation or something of that nature, just as if you held it yourself.
I mean, the problem where it is, it's not.
Yeah, and I mean, you got
Yeah,
a pig farmer right next door, right, so there's.
Yeah,
limited-
that is actually, I don't think you could build a house there because of the proximity to the barns, but I had an idea this week when I was thinking about that property is that, so there's a carpool lot at the corner of 81 and 22. If you took down that building and made it a car pool parking lot. It would be really useful there because that is also a corner where people can meet and go to work together.
Well, and I've seen the other one.
It's full.
It's full.
It's
Yeah,
full. It's
so
not
that
big
might
enough.
be
You don't
good
have
use, right?
grass.
Yeah, and people have asked for it to be
Yeah.
expanded, but
Yes.
that would actually take some
Pressure off. Yeah.
pressure off of the one
Yeah, you'd
at
have to
Four
go to
Corners.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you know, the snowplow's going right down that road anyway.
Anyway, I just
That's
need to
big.
make sure
Again, we
look
get
at the
into
properties we own.
who's going to monitor it and look after it. So that everything brings with it some sort of problems.
And
It's
I
not
think
lit,
most most
whereas-
carpool places like that, the ones along the 401 and stuff, say, you know, if you leave your vehicle here, please lock it. We cannot assume any
Yeah.
liability.
I'm
for
more
it.
thinking about the
The maintenance.
maintenance of it, like who's going to
Clearing
put gravel on it, who's going to grade it, who's going to plow it, all of that thing, because if we're providing it and whose responsibility is it, and again, it comes back to liability insurance, it comes down to who's responsible.
Yeah, I don't know
Snowplow
who.
goes in there, if it's our snowplow and we hit somebody, we're responsible.
Yeah.
Somebody else goes in there and somebody comes to us and says, well, you own the property, so it's your property. Well, no, it's not, but it is because we own the property. So, we get into that whole discussion too, so,
One other issue, I'm sorry I didn't bring it up sooner, but I just am reading my notes here, is the back street of Curd, I think it's called Havelock, where at the one end, I think the cops maybe live on the corner there where there's like a reoccurring drainage problem. So when the sewers were put in, was there not a bond put up by these people, like the contractors, so that they can be held accountable to that, to repair it? I have spoken to the drainage officer here, and he said it was because of the way the work was done at the time. So can we go back on them at all to step up and fix that, or is it something that needs to be added to our list from a maintenance standpoint to get it addressed?
if it is a problem, it's never been brought to this office.
Just one job.
I have never received it, so it
No,
could have been
it was
before.
brought up years ago.
Yeah,
That's the
so
first time that I
again,
was here.
because of the length of time from the time that the contractor was completed till now,
It's probably
we
a
likely
statute.
can't go back to the contractor, because I'm sure we released all the holdbacks to the
Yeah.
contractor. So, if that person has a concern in something, then again, go to that complaint form, send it in, and we can get it looked at and see what's going on.
Okay, thank you. And there's also one on Scotchmere, and but that's recent work. Scotchmere and Mayfair. Yeah, the corner, the little yellow house. So
Yeah,
there's,
yeah.
and I've encouraged that individual to contact the drainage person for that.
Yeah, and Jeff Little is looking into that as well.
Okay, good.
We're gonna skip over the other comments thing. I think we've
Yeah.
probably covered a lot of them.
we're going over.
Kathy, what were you thinking for the rating your views on the quality or effectiveness of the following services? We're going through it and kind of
Yes,
having everybody say where they're at and why.
yes, that would be
Okay.
good.
Land use planning. Who wants to start?
Sorry, which one is that?
So I don't.
I can
number
start.
six.
I didn't rate a few of them because I don't really
You want- Yep.
honestly know any. I'm not gonna guess them. The
Yeah.
only one you want to go each by each, or
So
you
let's
wanna
let's
say-
just go. Yeah, we'll go around. We'll do land use planning,
Okay.
and then everybody can. Yeah.
So I didn't put anything there.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a good. It can always be better, but.
And I will, I don't expect anyone to say excellent for any of them, because realistically, if everything is excellent, we shouldn't be sitting here again. So,
Yeah.
we have lots of room for improvement, we need to know where you wanna go,
Yeah.
because we need to know
Yeah, I
what
didn't
your
spend a
concerns
lot
are,
of-
so we can get on
I
it,
didn't
so.
spend a lot of time on this
Yeah.
section because I didn't.
So Kathy just said exactly what I was going to say. So I didn't really put excellent for anything. Just with land use planning, I put it's kind of on the middle between good and excellent, because I think in comparison to what we had before, we are in a much better position. We have somebody in the office once a week. People are being able to have one-on-one meetings, so I think it's very good. As well as having it on the county levy compared to us paying it at the local level. It makes it so then we have a little bit more flexibility in what we do with our application fee. So it actually is quite nice.
I can go down my list real quick. I've got land use planning, I've got that it's not poor, I would say it's fair, and that's only because I think that there should be some consideration given to hobby farms and whatever. I know we're restricted a little bit by the county, but I think we really should think about estate lots. Economic development is poor, and I tie that to some extent to the internet and the inability to attract business here if you cannot provide that. Police, I haven't had the OPP come and tap dance in front of us yet, so I'll give them a good for now. Fire, I think I have to say fire I think is excellent, only because I hear the horror stories at other meetings I go to about what's going on in other municipalities where you got guys walking out, people don't want to do the training. So I think we're pretty good that way. Parks and Rec, there's room for improvement there with the park downtown. I think, or down in Kerwood. I think roads are good. We're moving to an acceptable standard, I think, where everybody's happy there. Drainage, I think it's good. There's always room for improvement. Building services, I'm thinking that is in response to building inspections, but I could be incorrect. I've had some concerns from some ratepayers that they feel that there's not a timely response when they call, or they've set aside a time and then the person's not there and they then have to rebook. So there needs to be an accountability piece there. The municipal government and council, well, the jury's still out on us. We've only had a meeting or two, so I won't comment on that. And then the administration at the township office. There's a perception in the public that we're staff heavy. That's an education piece to some extent, or perhaps there's efficiencies that can be obtained.
You don't have a list in front of you, so you're having a hard time.
Yeah. Basically, I agree with Sue mostly. I think the land use, I thought we were good, and I thought we did well in getting rid of Mr. Green and bringing in the county. Economic development is poor. We haven't had the county even come out and address what vacant land we may have, so I don't see that being anything but poor. Policing, I think, is good. Fire is excellent. Parks and Recreation, I agree with Mike, it's poor, and I think Sue said poor. The environment, our land.
We skipped environment on the general one, because
Okay.
it really doesn't apply to what we do.
Okay.
And
I was
roads.
on that landfill site, so roads, I think we're good and we're going in the right direction. Water and sewer services.
We don't have that on ours either. We took it off because we don't offer a lot of services, so to comment on them.
Okay.
We can't
I was
rate them
gonna
today
say.
because we don't actually offer those services
Okay.
to any great degree.
Drains,
Yes.
I think is fair. Municipal government, as Sue said, in 4 years' time, that'll tell the tale there. And the administration, township office, I think we've made a good improvement there. And I can see more improvement needed, but I think we're coming in the right direction.
Okay, Mike, want to go through the
Yeah,
whatever you have
I was
listed
pretty
off?
well.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say is I've been very vocal about the Kirby Park. It can't look like that next year. We're gonna look like a bunch of fools. I
The
mean,
which?
we're gonna look like a bunch of fools if the grass in the Kirby Park
Oh,
looks like
for
it
the
did
park,
last year.
yeah.
Like
Yep.
that. I don't know what we gotta do to bring it up, if we gotta pay more or what, but it was not good.
Were there weather challenges, like because it was so much
No.
rain, or it was a
No.
timely issue?
It's
Okay.
just the contractor.
Okay.
So in our contract, we did, so in the previous year, it wasn't good, but we made sure that in our tender that we put out in the agreement we had with them is that the week leading up to the Kerwood Ball tournament,
2 weeks, they
Uh,
do the curve ball.
there'd be certain cuts and then had to remove all of the grass cutting and everything else. So in my opinion, I think it actually went well. I think that 2 weeks before it looked horrible, but everything was in line as it was supposed to be. Kathy already had it all lined up with the service provider, so I think it worked out well. It's just a matter of having the communication out there that was the process and that is what was going to happen. So I think yes, 2 weeks prior when
Or
you know,
even 2 days,
Yeah.
2
We
days.
can't have it
yeah.
like that. Like either we need to say it needs to be cut twice a week and pay for it, because once a week is obviously not enough. I mean, we had the Kerwood, the Optimists they got pictures of the kids trying to play soccer.
Well, that's the other thing. If
and
you're
the
using
grass
it as a
is like,
soccer
I mean,
field, it has to be
it's
maintained.
horrific. We have to look at more. I mean, if it's going to cost us more, so be it. I mean, we cannot have that place look like that.
So how soon do we tender for that? Is that an annual thing?
No.
Biannual, every 2 years.
Okay,
But we
so
gotta
are
look
they
at
the same
tweaking
guy
or
on the hook
something.
this year, or?
Yeah.
Where we
Yeah,
We're in
one
the
more
second year
Yeah,
of this
second
year,
year.
so 2020 will be the next 10 years.
Okay, so
But I mean, it
then-
rained. Yes, it did rain more, but having it reading in the tender once a week, so he probably wasn't doing wrong. I'm not like he wasn't probably
it's
doing
just
wrong.
you
But once a week
just
isn't
couldn't
enough.
keep up to
When it
date on
rains
what
every
we're
2
doing.
It does say minimum
Once a week is not enough.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
a minimum,
minimum once a
right?
week, and we have their
And I
instructions
think he was sticking to the
tell.
once a week,
Yeah.
right?
So perhaps somebody, like it's obviously not the fire chief's responsibility, but he's right across the road, so maybe he could bring it to our attention if it looks bad, or your road
Well, I
guy,
know a
or
fireman
somebody
that cut
drive
the
by.
fire one personally, just because.
But I
Oh,
think
really?
I think in general, just speaking of grass cutting and the fire hall and even the park, is that there was a lack of communication from the community members that were using it to let us know that the grass wasn't getting cut, and there was a lack of communication from the fire department that they didn't tell us that
They
it
were
wasn't getting
cut.
cut and that they cut it themselves. They didn't. They just took it
Yeah.
upon
So-
themselves.
So when we go by and the grass is cut.
Yeah, so you
we
can't
don't
fix
know
the
that
problem,
it's-
you don't know.
We
the
Yeah.
don't
risks,
know
exactly.
that, and that's what we.
But that's what I'm
we
saying,
advise
is
the
that
fire
or-
chief is, if
he
you don't
should've-
know, we can't fix this problem, so when you see this happening, you need to report that to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Conversely, with the park, there was a group that cut it a couple of times because they wanted to use it, so they just went out and cut the grass and used it.
Yeah,
But
well,
they
then
didn't
you-
let us know that either,
Yeah, so then you have no idea.
you-
Yeah.
We
When they go out
need
and
to
do
be
that, then-
proactive, because this has been 2 or 3 years in a row. There's obvious problems.
Is that
So
right?
yeah, that. So we need to be proactive on this.
Yeah.
We have to.
Well, prior to cutting season, maybe somebody needs to sit down with the cutter and tell him what the expectation is, and then he needs to step it up, because then the contract's going to get renewed next year, and
And we had the opportunity this year, I will let council know that when the contracts came back, the contractor that got it again this year was not, for the next 2 years, was not the lowest
No.
contractor,
No.
but the decision by council was made to go with that contractor.
okay, so
So, from an employee administration standpoint,
Council's
we advised
included.
council decided that's what they wanted to do. So we worked our best with that contractor to have it carried out as best we could.
okay, so just for clarification, you're starting year 2 of the 2-year contract,
Yes.
or you're starting year
Year
1
two
of the
of
second
two.
2-year contract?
Regular-
Two of two.
Year, it's the return, the second of 2-year contracts for the same contractor.
So just the
So
balance.
they were
okay.
But if we
2016,
don't do nothing
2017,
ahead?
2018, 2019.
It's going to look the same next year.
No,
We
but I don't know
need
who
to-
you task with that responsibility to
Right.
talk to the
I-
individual.
I talked personally
Okay.
with the owner,
Okay, perfect.
and that's the best I can do is call the owner and say I'm not happy,
Okay.
and then
But can we not expand or reopen that?
not at this
No.
point, no,
No.
not unless we wanna pay
I
the
mean,
full
we'll look like
contract
fools
for
if
the
it
year.
looks like that again next year.
Yeah, but if people aren't calling in and they're just going to cut it themselves, then it's really hard to hold the guy accountable. If he goes there.
I don't think we don't want
He
to go
can-
down that road again.
No,
right?
but if that guy is
It's-
going there to look
Yeah.
and the grass is cut, then he's not gonna come and do it.
And the problem is from administration is that if other people are cutting it, or if we know that they're going to cut it on whatever day, and then that's happening, but then they're not finding out that it's too high for the soccer program or whatever it is. It's hard to do that, but I think what needs to happen, I think council needs to see what the tender document says and what the agreement is to know how it works. And maybe, because it says a minimum of once a week, but I know that leading up to the ball tournament, it's additional.
Is it unlimited?
Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah. So maybe we just need to sit down and figure out how often it needs to be cut leading up to that, and then, that it's after that.
Like in the
it's cumulative.
spring, it's the same as anywhere. It needs to be cut double than it does now. This summer from August was everybody.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like spring needs to be separate than the middle of the summer.
Middle of
when-
July
when
when
it's
it's
not
not
growing.
growing. Yeah.
Right, and that's I think is the problem.
So perhaps it's just a communication piece.
Yes.
Yeah, we had it all arranged right the 2 weeks before, exactly what the contract said, we let them know what the date was, because we gear it around with the big events that are there, right, so.
Yeah, but we can't
The
have it
culture.
looking the way it did even prior to, right? You know what I'm trying to say? Like it just,
You want to
Yeah.
maintain.
it needs to be,
Yes.
it's our centerpiece. It needs to look good at all times. I feel.
Yeah, you wouldn't want the township office looking like that when you drive by, so it
No.
shouldn't be any different.
Shouldn't be either.
Okay, Mary Ann, want to continue on with your checklist?
Yeah, mine was almost identical to Betty Ann's. Yeah, I didn't have anything different. I just, Betty Ann went down. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the nice thing is, it's bad in the way that the issues are still the same because some of them aren't resolved, but it's also good in the way that there's not a whole lot of new issues, other than the sidewalks maybe.
And for myself, everything was pretty well the same. I think economic development, poor, and I have a note to talk to Kara Finn that she should go around. She's never done that. She's never gone to the lower tier, so that's a good idea. Policing, I put, good, fair, they do their job, but they, if we wanted to have an increased level of service, we would need to talk to them or look elsewhere.
And they used to come and make a yearly presentation, but they haven't been here for the
Well,
past 2
Kathy
years.
mentioned it at the last
Yeah.
meeting. She
Yeah.
brought that
They
up.
have a new inspector there, so he is more than willing to come out and.
Good.
So is he coming to any of our meetings before we opt in or out?
I
Are
think
you
we
able to
contacted them, but
coordinate
I don't think they've got back to us. I don't think they're going to be able to, just because of the timelines, so.
Okay.
But, I don't think that they would offer any input on whether you should opt in or out.
No, but just to give me speaking.
I don't think they
general
know what the
information.
ramifications are gonna be. with
I don't
all
think
of
anyone
this.
does.
I don't think anyone does, so
No.
I think it's really,
But you had brought that up at the last meeting that they had not
yes,
been
I would
here.
hope that
remember that.
they would come, but I'm
Yeah, no, you
guessing
can't
they're
force
not,
it.
they're not going to wanna put any input into it either, so.
I'm just going to continue down the list. Fire, I put them as good. I think overall, it's they do an excellent job. It's just one thing that we need to be a little more inclusive of people to apply to the fire department and making sure that there's that process there instead of having it just seem like we have a full staffing implement, even though there's never an actual application process. I think it needs to be open
Well, there's
to
gonna
anyone
be-
to apply.
There'll be some retire and you gotta replace them, it takes time.
Well, to your
agree.
point, I have been to different funerals and down in St. Catharines and whatever, and there's 2 or 3 women on the volunteer fire department, and I don't think we have that experience in Adelaide Metcalfe, and maybe
I
there
just
should
don't
be.
know if anybody's ever applied. I
Applied.
know
No.
Winston has a couple.
How would you?
No, so
So
what
it's
I
not an open
no. So what
application?
I'm saying is
Yeah.
that
It's,
we have never had an application process for our fire department, and we need to start doing that.
we have our hiring policy, but it's not been extended as far as it should.
So that's
Basically just been
handpicked.
Word of mouth.
handpicked and.
So
Yeah.
would that be something, to your point about like the website, would that be something you'd post on the website saying that we're currently receiving applications, or?
I wouldn't wanna do that behind the fireman's back though either, right?
Well, no.
No, that there's just a process that
We
needs
need
to
to
No,
make it,
you would
we
make
need to
that
make it
public
a more
knowledge.
open process as
Yeah.
opposed to what's currently being.
Yeah, see, I have no idea, how does it work now? They just
Well,
knock
they
on the
just-
door and show up, or?
Yeah, a few guys ask a few guys and it just works so far, right? But
Essentially, we need a more open process.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that we're not excluding people
that may
that we could become,
Right.
because the township is the hiring authority,
Right.
we could be held under human rights discrimination.
Exactly.
So we have to make sure we
Yeah.
have an open process.
But no, and I wasn't suggesting we go behind the fire department.
Yeah,
They would be
but
open
I just say
to
we
There
better-
just needs to be a
We'd be
process, is what I'm
transparent
saying.
about
The
how that
process
would
needs
work.
to be more open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, yeah, because that's the
Good
one
idea.
thing that I see is something that needs to be improved.
Mhm.
Parks and Rec, I have it as like a good fair. I think we have a process that's going to be coming up with the Kerwood Park, so hopefully that'll improve it.
And getting on the parks and the fire hall, would not digital signage there help to let ratepayers know what's going on at the park and the applications for the fire department? And it could all be done through the office here or Aaron's internet, whatever.
I think it still has to be on the website, because when
Well,
I
yes,
spoke
that
to a
as
lot
well.
of people in what I'm going to call the Healy subdivision, which doesn't really have a name off the Pike Side Road, is they didn't even know there was an all candidates meeting, even though it was on the sign in Kerwood. Well, that's not their community of interest.
No.
They don't travel through there. So that's why we need the internet.
And that's where I think I brought it up before with the email subscription, where people, the staff puts together something and they email it out. I know I'm on the subscription list for Stratford Care Doc. I get emails from them like every other day or every day.
But you don't have to go looking for it.
No, it comes to me.
Which
That's
is a
what I'm
great
saying.
idea.
Yeah.
So I like that.
And then roads, I think we're doing quite well on that. Drains, really no concern there. Building service, I think I had very similar thoughts as Sue, where, you know, timely and that type of thing. I think overall it's good, but I haven't really had anything recent. Municipal government and council, I think we're working well together. We'll find out in a few years. And then
You want our honest opinion?
and then administration and township office.
You would do it at the beginning and then not at the end.
We'll wait a few months.
Yeah. Administration and township office. I think obviously we've much improved over the last number of years, and then specifically with the township office, we need to get into that next discussion of the hub and that type of thing. So.
And getting to drainage, we need to update that drainage map because there was one that didn't show up on.
That's budget.
Okay. So then the next section to review then, Kathy, is the building our community item 2.2, or where do we go?
Yes, I think that should be next, because we're going to
Yes.
put the one at a time, over your time.
So building our community, which is the questionnaire with the hub.
Oh, the hub discussion.
Yeah.
So does it look like preliminary investigations have been done for accessibility? Is that what that says there? Or that's just a requirement? This 2.2, is that what you're talking about?
No, so sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It was on the top of the sheet that I circulated, it says building,
Our community.
The questionnaire with the hub.
yes. Item 2.2, on my sheet, I just gave you that.
So that's 2.2.
There was a 2.2 in our strategic plan, so we're just pulling that out to see if this is still where you want to go, because it's another, again, it's another key feature of what our strategy is going to conclude.
I'm just reading the status update.
Oh, okay.
Was the one says offer to purchase land was rejected. Park improvements included tree trimming, player benches, and bleachers. And then that was the September update.
Yeah, so for that was, just to let everyone know, in 2018, some land here at the park became available through an offer, through a tender process. The council of the day determined that they wanted to submit a tender. We submitted and we were rejected, so we did not get the land that was around the park. So that's just updating how that, I mean, we made an offer to purchase so that we could have land available, but it was rejected. So
Oh,
It's
okay.
the farm that runs right from the ballpark up to the church.
to the north
There's a
of
50
Ballpark.
acre, correct?
Some cabins.
There's a house there.
55, yeah.
So does everybody have the sheet in front of them? So I guess the first question is, define hub. What do you see as part of the hub? Definition of what we're thinking.
I had, for our municipality, I would see the hub as being so recreation, office, meeting area, possibly, like, I mean, we're not a big enough municipality to have a library branch, but something with resources that the public could access.
Okay.
I see it as being good.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously the fire department added to that hub somehow.
So what I have is a location where the community gathers for information, meetings, events, or leisure. So, yeah. Do you concur that creating a hub in Kerwood remains a priority? I think Betty just said yes. Everybody kind
It's really the only logical place. Everything else is too far from center. Like where we would put it.
Okay. And the next question is, if the administration office were to be moved, where would you move it to?
Well, I got to move to the hub in my mind.
Kathy, you wanting like a specific, just saying Kerwin, or you're
Yeah,
thinking like
before,
specifics?
we did this exercise before,
Yeah.
in 2017, I believe, before we had that opportunity to purchase land, so when this was just, where would you put it? If you had anywhere in the township that you could move the administration offices to, where would you put them? Would you retain in a rural locale, like would you be out here with, on your own? Would you move to a center that's already developed somewhat? Would you be closer to Strathroy? Like, what would you see as where you would go?
Yep, Sue?
That was the reason I went to the fire department yesterday, is I was trying to see if there's additional land on, because it looks like at the fire hall there's administrative activities that have to occur, and perhaps there could be some efficiencies there. If you didn't have this building, the proceeds from this building could do a renovation over there. I mean, maybe that's not a long-term strategy, but yeah, it's just something to consider, I think.
You know, I just made note, you know, the churches and the halls for sale. It's almost too bad they weren't on
The same
adjacent
side of
property
the
with
road.
with the road going through the middle. Because you can't really,
Mhm.
if they were both one property,
Mhm.
you might have enough room there to
Close the road.
That's what I just said. I was saying that, like, we could close the road.
You give me a
build
problem, I'll find you a
build
solution.
per se, but being on two separate properties, that
That's what
doesn't
it
give
is,
you
like,
enough.
like,
It doesn't
Yeah.
give you enough space.
No, and you've got actually, what you've got on those two properties is one pretty decent building and one that you could probably knock it over if you worked real hard at it.
Yeah.
And the wrong one is on the wrong parcel, because the one, the church has a lot beside it as well,
That's
so
right.
if it was reversed, it would be it would be more ideal for
Mhm.
some sort of a building,
Yeah.
because you would have a lot more room to work with.
And I think before we get into other locations or anything like that, that's probably best to deal with when we discuss like specific properties to do enclosed, because if not, people will start jumping up and down for joy for, you know, let's, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're
But I
not
think-
closing any roads today.
No.
Yeah.
no, so I think in general we're thinking Kerwood is where we would move the office to if we were to move it. Do you agree with spending funds to acquire property for the township? So, reserve funds or whatever.
I guess my first concern is I don't really know how much is in reserves yet. Like that was my limiting.
Yeah.
You know, again, in my mind, is this feasible? Like I just don't know that answer personally.
Okay.
Yeah, see, the thought behind that is we own this right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have no debt. Is the council wanting to incur debt to have a new office? Is that something the council wants to do?
You
Right
also have an
now,
asset here to
right
sell.
now, that's right,
Right.
yeah, we do. The problem being is we don't own property large enough right now
To do
to
it.
pick up and move. So if we sold this, we would have to expend probably more money to acquire a property plus do a building. So that's a consideration. So we don't have the ability to just say, we can build this over here because we already own that property. We're gonna have to expense for land acquisition plus building. So are you willing to do that? Because again, that's gonna add, either you're gonna add to debt, which the township has no debt right now, or you're going to deplete reserves. When you start using reserves, how do you put those back into those reserves? We have lots of reserves, we're doing fine, but some of them are earmarked for specific purposes, so there's not an unlimited amount that you can touch. But if you're going to do that, how do you raise money to build a building too? So again, it's a matter of how much debt does the township want to have on their books.
I think my issue with moving is, first of all, what do you need to do to this building to bring it up to whatever codes make it accessible? And is that going to cost more money than moving to a place where everybody potentially, if we're all connected digitally, why does it matter where the office is? I realize this is a long drive for the south half of the township, but how many people physically are doing their business here? And does it make sense? Is there some investment that we get some payback on moving? Or do the residents save so much money by us being closer to them? Like, aside from the fact that it's nice to have everything in one place, what's the drive to have it moved?
Is the current space here fine?
The space is fine. Our problems is accessibility. It's getting to the basement. Right now, the way we operate, our records are all downstairs. Our lunchroom and everything is downstairs. Everything else is upstairs. So when we hire, we're discriminating against those people who can't use stairs to get downstairs. Because they either have to go out of the building, drive around and access it from downstairs to go get records and then come back around. And that's discriminating based on disability. So we haven't had that problem so far in our hires, but it is something that council needs to be aware of, that if we don't hire the best candidate because they can't get downstairs, we could have a problem.
Well,
So
just by virtue of the
accessibility
fact
is-
it's not accessible, we're already discriminating.
Yes. Yeah, so accessibility would be the largest challenge here. I think the water, we don't drink the water, we provide water bottles, we bottle water here. There's likely systems out there that could fix the problem. We do have something downstairs, but whether it was the best system at the time, we're not sure. But we are somewhat space challenged too. This council room isn't likely the best formatted for council meetings because of the layout of it. It's not formatted so that it's the best for everyone for visuals and that kind of stuff. We could use more space would always be good. A better records management system would be good, but we can continue to operate. We're not at a point where we can't operate either.
That's what just quickly went through my mind, has there ever been an addition price looked at, that's the other thing, like you talk about buying land and outside of Kerwood, and I know how much that's gonna cost, a lot. And build everything
Even
new is gonna
Adelaide
be
clay
a
is
lot.
overpriced.
Well, but everything.
Yeah.
Is there enough room here? Like, does the garage need another bay? Do you do a 1 bay thing? Do you put a little addition on this? Maybe that will save us millions compared to buying new, building everything new.
Going into debt.
You'd be in a lot of debt.
So I think when we look at the entire thing, what we need to also consider is that when we look at the Kerwood Park and we look at, saying, doing washroom facilities, or we're looking at doing a community room or whatever it is, there's always different ideas and different opportunities that we have. So if we're looking at having a new meeting space in Kerwood, are we talking about a standalone item at the park? Are we thinking expanding maybe the front hall in the Kerwood fire hall? Or there's a lot of different options, but the fact is that once you build something new, and if we were to build something new, like say the washrooms at the park, it only makes sense to make it bigger and add more, relocate or add on more to that space. Because once you put a shovel in the ground, you already have the initial cost, and you could easily.
You're very space limited there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do something there, you really, in my mind, can't do much bigger than the barn that's there now.
Either that or lose a
So-
diamond.
Or we would lose the ball
Or
diamond,
you lose a
which
diamond.
would be we would have to give up. You have to give something up to get something too. So that's what we need to know what council's thought is on that direction.
Or that's where
We
you
haven't
are.
spent any money on engineering to see what this office would need, but then it also comes down to, we have 2 work yards. What is the service level you want from that work yard if it's to close and be all centralized here? Because again, that causes inefficiencies in timing and getting equipment out on the road. Out on the roads, especially in the winter time when it's crucial to be out there within so many hours because your minimum maintenance standard says you want them out there in certain times. But then it also comes down to the more roads you tar and chip that direction, the more you need to have a sand and salt shed, which is you're going to be investing in that area at some point anyway because you're going to need to put a new sand and salt shed up there.
And we already know
Because
that.
what is there is not sufficient for the quantities that you're going to need. So, and again, it comes to more equipment because does the backhoe need to be here? Does the backhoe need to be there? Right now we're sharing with the county, which is a great service because it's right down the road. If that was to discontinue, then what do we do? Because then we have a salt shed down there, which isn't good for this area of the township. So, you know, that discussion has to happen is what do you want to
Is
see?
that a
like,
multi-year
what-
agreement with the
There's no written agreement, but it's
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 new
an
storage.
understanding.
it's yeah,
It's new storage.
it's a good
It'll be there a
understanding
while.
that we have with them. And,
Which I hope should be. I mean,
yeah,
And the other thing that we
you don't need to double up on
We
everything.
pay them for it, it's not
Yeah.
free gratis.
Yeah.
Like, they
Oh, I
pay-
realize that, but to
Yeah.
build,
Yeah.
like, I mean, how many, you need to utilize other things to other people.
Well, whatever you can share is gonna reduce costs, so I mean, that's always a good thing.
And when you're looking at, say, building a garage or something like that, there's other municipalities that have just recently built buildings like that. So we could easily just look at what they have and we could purchase the drawings off of them to easily build something if that was the case. But the other thing is that we have to also keep in mind when we're talking about this, the hub idea is that yes, we have the park there, and yes, and I'm a big picture thinker, and that yes, we have the Kerwood Park there, but in reality, it's 2 diamonds, 2 pavilions, and playground equipment that we're most likely going to have to replace. Our playground equipment gets replaced every 10 years. So we're already close to, I think we're 7 or 8 years. So in reality, yes, that land is there, but that doesn't mean that the park has to stay there forever. We could look at, we could purchase a large property, say south of the tracks or north of Kerwood, and you can relocate and have a brand new hub somewhere. Like you,
Yeah, there hasn't been money spent there per se and
Yeah.
ever.
So, like-
really, like I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest, it really hasn't.
yeah. So there's
it's not like you're getting rid of stuff that you put money into.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
So-
brand new being turned away just for the sake of making it
Yeah.
brand new. But if that's what we want, we have to start looking for appropriate areas that
Yeah.
can we find something that will work for our purposes, and what is the cost to get that property that's going to work for our purposes.
So I think if the idea is to have a hub in, or the idea is the priority to see, should we either retrofit what we have here or look at the garages or whatever, is we need to have that timeline as a priority. As we need to make a decision at say year 1 or something as to do we either do something here or do we look somewhere else. And it's not a matter of, I don't think as council don't need to be looking at the specifics as to where. We just need to know that's the direction we're going, and then staff has to take over and start looking into it.
Yeah, because you don't even know what to research if you have no directions. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
That's what we need to know is, do you want to see it centralized into a hub area, which is likely Kerwood, because that's the best place for it right now. So if you do, then when we create our budgets and our asset management plan, we'll gear it to start preparing for something to happen in that area. Because again, right now we're through our insurance process. We're getting the basement carpeted and everything. Well, this upstairs hasn't been done for about the same time frame. So do we invest any money in it, or do we say, yeah, if we can keep getting by repairing and touch-ups and that kind of stuff, is that fine? Do we invest in paving the parking lot? Because we did it a few years ago. There's dips, there's dives, it's slippery. Do we do that, or do we just say, you know what, we can live with it because we know in 3 to 5 years this plan is going to take place, so there's no point in spending, just have them come over with a bucket of hot cold mix and fill it, as opposed to tear it up and replace it. The signage out front, it's not working again, so do we have them come out again and spend money fixing it and repairing it, or do we just say, you know what, we're going to get a new sign at our new place, so why would we spend $10,000 putting a sign in here that if we move it, it probably won't work as good? Wait, put it off, because that's going to be the better thing to do with our money.
Is
Well, the other thing-
there assessment values in place, like what this property's worth and what the main ones that
We-
you would
we have-
get rid of?
We have
build them?
assessment values, but they're not realistic
Not
because
realistic.
they're exempt properties, that Manpack doesn't take a real look at it. Realistically, it depends on what we would sell it as, because this parcel
Guess
is
we could
one
probably-
and then the
We could
garage
probably
is
get a
separate.
pretty close idea. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
have to.
We could get an
hire
appraisal
somebody
done
to-
pretty quickly.
Well, I
for-
even think
for a
between
little.
enough minds, we can have a rough idea.
Well, the other
And
thing
that should be
too
done
is-
in camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any asset, whether it be your own or the township's, you maybe don't have to go full tilt, but you still have to maintain.
We still have
the
some
investment.
maintain that needs
So
to be done,
you,
yeah.
there's still general maintenance that you can't just
Right.
say, well, we're not gonna fix
Yeah.
the little pothole out there. I mean, there's a liability piece on
Yeah,
that too.
and that's just as a reference, is it just to know how far do we go with when we decide to do something, do we go full tilt?
Like a
Because the way
Band-Aid
it
or
really
a-
should
yeah.
be, like in here, it'd be really great if we had, if we could revise this, but in the meantime, should we put in a projector so that we automatically have it, so when someone comes out to do a laptop, it just sits in the floor and we just
That's
uncover it, there it is, and they can do the presentation. Do we put a screen that comes down from the top because it makes it easier for everyone instead of having to move everybody around? And, you know, it's those kind of things that we should be doing. Conference call, you know, do we set something up so we have the plugs in the middle of the room, so we just plug everything in and we're all good to go. It's those type of investments that are a little bit bigger than your normal day-to-day kind of repairs. How much do we spend? It's just to get, so we don't put those things in our budget and we do something and then tear it out because
Well,
we
then
know
it's
2 years
it's
later
wasteful.
we're
Yeah,
taking
it's
it out
wasteful.
again. It's
Yeah.
just to make sure that we have things that we're realistically investing in these, in our existing facilities that we're not gonna tear out and be done with in the next one.
What close municipality, we're not Middlesex Center, like, we're not even
No.
the Taj Mahal. Is there a small one that has done a 4 or 5 bay garage with a municipal office in the last 10 years? Like,
There's been nothing that's been together as one.
No,
Yeah.
North Middlesex they put their library and their town hall and
Service Ontario and everything else.
Service Ontario.
That's the
It-
Parker Hill one, right?
No,
no,
Park
it's
Hill.
not Park Hill.
Park Hill. Oh, Park Hill, okay.
Yes.
Luke Medolf just did, they converted the school in Lucan into the municipal office, and then on the other portion is the library. So they just did that.
I don't think we need one in the library.
No, we wouldn't. We won't.
No,
Right,
but
yeah.
you
No,
know,
yeah, just-
but something, say, just where people could get access.
Well, you're thinking like if they, like sort of a resource center where if they needed internet because they didn't have it at their house, they could go there
Yeah,
and tap
that
in.
kind of resource.
Yeah. So there's nothing recent where it's just a standalone office. I think there's been a lot of, Brooke Elvinson, they did an addition, I think, on theirs.
No, they just renovated.
Okay, so they did a renovation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
renovation.
Yeah, I don't think Brooke Ellison's done much.
Southwest just met.
They converted their garage.
Keep renovating, yeah.
They kept the fire
Because as
department.
far as being accessible, it would require a little addition with an elevator for making the basement
Or a chair.
accessible.
Chair rail as well.
Well, if you're in a
Yeah,
wheelchair.
Chairlift wouldn't cut it here because of the steepness that it would have to be. We would have to go with a lift.
Okay.
So, is there anything else that we haven't really talked about for pros and cons for this current office that people had written down? Okay. The only other one I don't think was said was that one of the pros that we're already beside one of our existing garages, so the proximity to that. Any more pros and cons to building a new office or a multi-purpose facility?
Well, the cons would be the cost,
Yeah.
and that's the only barrier I see. And then the pros would be that everything would be in one place. There'd be maybe a little more sharing of services, and if there's administrative needed at the fire hall going forward, that could be all in one place instead of two separate offices.
And then also adding in that we have a community room of some sort, which we haven't had before, and we're losing the church community hall.
And there's rental potential. I mean, you can
Yeah.
rent that out, and there's an income stream we could get from that.
And then we somewhat touched on this, but about the works yard. So there's 2 work yards. Are 2 work yards efficient for service delivery, and what are your thoughts on sharing facilities?
I would ask the road guys how much extra driving they'd have to do if they had to cover, this half of the township from Kerwood. Or go down to Innadale from Kerwood. I mean, I know that it's 35 clicks to go from my house to that end of the township, so that's a long way to run a grader.
So kind of the things I had on there was there'd be less duplication of tools and equipment. So there's some things that, replacement and everything else, obviously when you bring the 2 together, you wouldn't remove, get rid of anything, but in the future you wouldn't have to duplicate things. one issue would be is if we were to relocate and build something in the Kerwood areas that we would literally have everything in one basket. We'd have the fire hall there, we'd have the township office there, and also the works yard. So then we'd have an issue of if we had, say, an emergency situation, all of our emergency spaces would be in one spot. In my mind, I think it's a good idea to have, you know, everything kind of in close proximity, but I also think could be a benefit to looking at the centralizing it more in the Pike Napperton area. To bring it back to what Mike was saying with snow removal, is that if we do have more sidewalks there, if we had a building in that area, we could have a snow removal equipment deployed from, say, a garage there, easily get on the sidewalks and remove from there. And it is centralized still in the municipality. It's not centralized meaning in, you know, the center east-west, but when you look at it, it is still in the center because the further north part, it goes a lot further east and even from the south part. So that's
might cost you more for property though. You're getting that close to town too.
So there's that look as well. So that's I just want to throw this out
Apparently
there.
Class D farmland because they could put solar panels on it.
Yeah.
Is there any other comments on the works yards?
I said stuff at the beginning of the meeting that I think that would be a conversation that would be valuable to have input from the roads people on that, because they're the ones that know what their challenges and
The equipment they have.
Yeah. And I know that Jeff Little has had conversation with Kathy, so.
We've discussed it at length on what would be best for his department, so.
Okay. Kathy, what's the next step?
So,
We need to go through.
So do you want to go back to the actual strategic plan? We do have a vision that was created in 2015. And the vision identified in that time period was a vibrant, engaged, and diversified community. Is this vision accurate and reflective of our township?
yes.
Yep.
As vibrant as we can be.
It's a vision. It doesn't mean it's an
That's
actual
right.
fact yet.
That's right.
It's our vision.
Is
No,
there
that's right.
something you want to see added to it? Do you want to, like, if, when I look at when I see a vision, is something, would you put that on a sign? If you were putting out Township of Adelaide Metcalfe, a vibrant, engaged, and diversified community? Or is there something that better describes us as a community?
I'm not a guy that gets too excited about this kind of stuff, so to me, it's fine. Right? Like,
Yeah, it's a fluff.
I mean,
I
just-
get you.
For me, the vibrant engaged is fine. I think the diversified community, I have a hard time with that one because I think when you say that to somebody, people don't understand what that means with diversified community. I think when you look at it, they're talking about more about the demographics and the village and the agriculture part. But I think if you were to say that to someone else, they may
An average person, they'd be thinking LGBT or something
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
nature. Yeah.
which obviously,
fine.
yeah,
Or
but
we are the whitest township in the Ontario, probably.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that we could possibly look at. Obviously, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so
The
look
only
at,
thing I would think about adding, I don't know if you'd put it there or somewhere under your mission statement, is, you know, I think we feel like we live in a safe community. And I don't know how you'd incorporate that in there or not, but, and then to that point, the safety piece of your sidewalks plays into that, where we have an obligation to uphold that.
And we always have to keep in mind that the vision part is something that we're reaching towards. So
diversified to me is a negative word as opposed to a positive word. Like vibrant and engaged are both positive. Diversified to me, when I read it, I think that's more negative, because diversified to me means this is over here and this is over here, where we're working harder and harder all the time to be Adelaide Metcalfe, not Adelaide and Metcalfe. So diversified to me still shows that, you know, there's this over here and this over here, whereas we want to be one. I think a vibrant and engaged community is better than with and diversified. And I think that diversified just puts that negative, little bit of a negative side to it. when I hear that. I think diversified means, oh, they don't know what they're doing.
Unless-
This going on here and this going on
Unless
here.
you phrase it that it's an engaged community that celebrates its diversity, rural
That's better.
and
Just
and urban, and
Yeah.
it's just a phraseology. But if you celebrate something, it puts a positive tone to it.
Yeah, that's better. I like that better. It
Yeah.
celebrates its diversity or something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And uniqueness or something of that nature. So, anyway.
so we'll do some wordsmithing, come back with maybe possibly a few different ways to say that, and we'll keep on thinking about it anyways. So the next one is the mission statement. We are a rural municipality committed to delivering quality and affordable services that enhance resident quality of life, support progressive economic development, sustains the viability of our community. And does this statement again remain viable going forward?
I'm good with it.
Yeah, but I have an advantage because I was there when we decided why we liked those statements, so it was hard to think outside of that. But the quality of life covers the stuff that we want to do, and with the services and stuff, and and the viability of our community. We haven't talked about a lot today, but we did talk about, like, if we can't afford to do things that we need to do, then we lose the ability to maintain our municipality.
On the mission statement. Penny Ann, you
I didn't mark anything on it at all, so I guess I was okay with it.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it because it does, your quality of economic development, we've already talked about the internet and all that stuff, so it all kind of meshes together. So I'm good with what's on there now.
I'm good.
Good with that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of it's still applicable,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
it
a
doesn't mean-
lot of it hasn't changed, is getting that diversified into something more, like something more that's a more positive, we're Adelaide Metcalfe, we should be positive, not have a negative
Absolutely,
word in
so
there.
we'll celebrate, because to
I'd
your
like to
point,
have-
there's still, I don't know how long it takes, when you amalgamate anything. They usually say 3 to 5 years, but there still is the Adelaide.
We're on 19.
And part of the
We're
problem is we've
working on
got
19 and we're
livestock and no livestock.
Yeah,
So
we're
so we're getting there,
A
but.
lot of communities have come together a lot faster, this one's been a lot longer, being two separate and distinct ones, as opposed to one community, so.
I still, when I was campaigning and somebody still said, well, yeah, you got more representation. So I actually went through the voters list. So I divided roughly the railroad tracks, north and south of the railroad tracks, 2/3 of the population on this side of the railroad tracks.
This side being
The north side.
the labeled Adelaide side.
So north of the tracks is 2/3 of the population, and they had 3/5 of the representation. They now have 1/5 of the representation. If we're going to divide it that way. So I don't know how we get away
Well, we
from
don't have wards, we're not big enough for that, so.
No, it doesn't make sense. It'll just,
Divine.
It's gonna just lay where it does, so.
yeah. So.
So we can just go through the principles and just determine if you would agree or disagree with each statement. The following principles were identified for the township of Adelaide Metcalfe. We believe that agriculture is the economic foundation of the township and the township as a community. I believe it still rings true.
Yeah, I wish there was another way. I think agribusiness. Because it's
Business
good.
as opposed to agriculture.
Because people don't think of, when they think of agriculture, they only think of the farming. They don't think of like the Dortmunds and the Middlesex and your business and.
And they don't think of the agritourism,
Yeah.
like the Metcalfe, or what's it called, the Texas Longhorn Ranch, like we are a diversified community
Yeah.
that way.
Yep, that makes sense.
Balanced growth. In pursuing economic development initiatives that balance the diverse needs of agriculture and residents in our rural community. I think so, because as anything economic, it just benefits everyone when it happens. Is community. In continually fostering the profound sense of community that exists in Adelaide Metcalfe, our unique places and heritage.
Yes.
Engagement. In continually engaging our residents through multiple communication approaches in the planning and development of our community and the decisions of council.
I agree, and to that end, I'd like to see, I don't know if it's in place now because I don't know, I didn't follow the website too closely prior to now, is if you have annual open houses for the community to be invited in and a Q&A or whatever.
Not yet.
Yeah, so anyway, that's just something I'd throw out there.
Yeah.
Environment. In effectively conserving our environmental resources in harmony with agricultural best practices and sustainable development. Fiscal feasibility. In pursuing township initiatives that are economically sound, add value for the funds invested, and are feasible in both their capital and operating perspectives. Compliance. In being compliant with all regulatory and statutory requirements of a municipality, the province of Ontario, with the government of Canada. And we strive to be in compliance with everything. Progressive. In developing an organizational culture within the township that fosters innovation, continuous learning and improvement, and is responsive to community trends and resident needs.
Yep, I agree.
Striving to be.
Accountability. In being accountable to our ratepayers for the use of the financial resources provided, the decisions we make on their behalf, and being transparent and acting with integrity in all that we do.
It's kind of a no-brainer.
On that integrity piece, the Integrity Commission is just starting January 1, 2019. That's when it's in play, or it's on
March.
all the way around?
March.
March. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So in regards to the strategic directions,
Just
I
a
think-
second, Kathy.
yes.
So with those, I at first when I was reading through these, I assumed it was alphabetical. It's
Yes.
not.
always.
No. So is that kind of?
I think that was just how we went through and identified them
Okay.
in 2015. I think that
Yeah.
those were as they were brought
Just
forward
brought
as
forward.
priorities, kind of put together. So
Yeah, I just didn't know if we wanted
It kind of
to.
starts.
we should probably.
I thought it was.
it was at
Yeah,
first.
I thought it
We
was in
should
the
probably
capital.
make
Something
them
happened.
alphabetical because there's
Yes.
really no reason not to have them in some sort of
Yeah.
like your accountability again. That's very important. You're accountable to every person that
Yes.
lives in this municipality. So your accountability is probably one of your higher priority functions that you do is to make sure that you're open and acting with integrity.
Okay. Yeah, because
So
I
we
thought
will
it was.
read
until-
those so they're alphabetical.
Minor, okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So we will go through for the strategic directions for where we said agree or disagree based on our discussion earlier with what with the hub and prioritizing bylaws and stuff. I think we need to go through that exercise and set up your matrix with some sort of timeline for them.
Yes.
And then fill this portion in based on how that matrix fills out with the what your discussion was today.
So you have under strategic direction 2016 to 2020. So what would we be putting down? 2019.
Yeah, we'd look at it and say,
Like
what
4 years.
realistically, when,
2022.
how soon can this all be accomplished? So
Yeah,
you would say if it, and again, I think they were limiting it to this term. I think it just said ongoing after that in the
Okay.
strategic
Okay.
plan. So I think that it's something that if it's going to start, you're not going to likely see the fruition of a lot of this stuff in 2020, or 2022. So it would have to be ongoing. So when you would want to see it start and when you want to see it, like a lot of it is just going to continually go. Like I think when we had the, some of them had like time ends, but I think that when you start with like you're improving your communications and stuff, you're never going to be done that.
No.
I think that as the world evolves and as communication avenues like social media, Twitter, all that kind of stuff evolves, we need to be up on all that stuff and maintain our our currency with that. So I think that you can't just put it, say at 2022 that's going to be done, or 2020 that's going to be done. It's ongoing. So
Well, and even, for example, if we agree to go ahead and put sidewalks in, they have to be tendered, there's an engine, like it's not gonna happen in 90 days, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be
As much as
it'll be-
I'd like that to be the case.
But if we can at least get something to start, like to say 2019, you want to see the engineering prepared to evaluate the program, so that you can say, okay, the engineering's done. It's going to cost X number of dollars to do from here to here, X number of dollars from here to here. Which section are we going to start with, and where do we go from there? So we have that
Well, a
plan in
template,
there,
yeah, for sure.
so that we can at least have a plan available, so that you can start thinking about what is the true cost. Because right now we're not dealing.
We
with
don't
any-
know.
We don't know specifically. We have best guess, but really until you sit down and actually look at the physical layout of the stretch of road, as well as the obstacles that are in the road, we don't know what the cost is going to be. So I think we need to have that to build on, to say we want this done 2019, so that this can happen in 2020 or this 2022.
Well, and to your
that
point
kind of
earlier is, and then if it had, from a budgeting standpoint, if it has to be a chunk at a time, at least you move in that direction,
You know
right?
what direction we're going.
I think a chunk at a time is a good idea.
Yeah, and we can
Say
at
we're
least-
gonna do it all at once, I don't think that's,
Yeah, not
I
like
don't think we can do
once.
it, but I think we need to have something
Well,
in
plan.
effect this year to get going next year.
Yeah, so you can say to people, okay, yes,
Okay,
we're going to put
start
sidewalks
here,
in.
and the next year we're gonna.
We're starting here because of this reason, and to have some logic behind it, as opposed to saying, we're just gonna plunk sidewalks in.
Yeah,
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
correct.
It's just, where's our best dollar being spent, and where can we get the best advantage of it? And when we put sidewalks in, make sure we're not going to lead ourselves into some other sort of situation that's going to be worse. So, like, there's pros and cons
Yeah,
to Maverton
for
and
sure.
81, so which one is the best fit for?
So if the
For the
county's
first
gonna
start.
do something major, there's no point putting a sidewalk in,
Yes.
if they have to rip it out.
Again, it goes
Especially
back
if they
to-
widen the road or something, then you've wasted
Right.
your money, right? So-
Exactly. We want to make sure that we don't jump in and say, this is what we're doing, and then they come back and say,
Yeah,
oh,
3 years
we just
later,
approved
they're
our
ripping all that.
budget.
3 years
We're
later.
taking those out because.
It takes
we're
3
gonna do
years
this.
to get anything done on the 81.
And again, that sidewalk, now at council, when it sets this as one of their priorities, we can also look at other planning issues when it comes to subdivisions and site development and that kind of stuff, and say, listen, people, we need money from you because we need to put sidewalks in. So you either put them in now, or you can pay us, and we're gonna put it away in our sidewalk reserve, and then we'll have that when those sidewalks need to be put in, because, we've put them in from here to here. Those sidewalks can go in next, and you're paying for it because you're developing that property. So we start to get into, it starts to flow out of our strategic plan and into our other aspects of business.
It's actually interesting, it's kind of a side point, but since we've been talking about sidewalks the last half a year or so, I was driving out of town and I noticed that on 2nd Street, we actually have a sidewalk in front of what used to be past the wine store, right there
Well,
along
Park
2nd
Electric
Street.
down there.
I've never seen anybody walking on it, I just happened
Oh,
to
I know.
notice it. And I was-
The high school students, they use it for
Oh,
when they
I
run.
drive that road every
Yeah.
single day going to.
Yeah, I know
There's
that
people
on the
walking.
on the other side of Head Street, I
Yeah.
see it used all the time, but
Yeah.
that particular section.
I'm not sure who, I'm assuming Strathroy Caredog paid for that? I don't know how that
I'm
came to be.
assuming so, because it wasn't.
And obviously they must maintain it.
Yeah.
Well, it's not very well maintained. Take a good look at it.
Well, I've had conversations with somebody about that before, and at the end of the day, we have to provide safety,
Mhm.
right? Like there's
Mhm.
an issue there, so.
So, what's the, obviously you said the next steps, Kathy, but what are you thinking timeline next steps?
I would think we can probably have something put together for the January 21st council meeting. This is a lot to put together to have it out tomorrow for
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
agenda
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm thinking it's going to be more the 21st, so at least you can have something and start with the priority task matrix and start with that so we can get those established and then work that backwards into our strategic plan itself.
Can I get, I know I might be able to find it, could somebody send, especially Sue too, what we have in the reserves and what
Yep.
money's
I
out?
actually have financial statements because I
Okay, 'cause
I
I
got
didn't
them
quite get
before.
that and I haven't seen it yet and I'd like to get that in my mind.
Sure.
Like, I think that's pretty important.
Well, you need to know where you're working from.
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is a place to jump in and ask this, or if I'm running ahead on you here. I see here the possible longer-term development of the Kerwood Road and the Highway 402 interchange. So what was the thought behind that in the last strategic plan?
It was a big picture idea. It was one of the ones.
It's really long range.
Yeah.
Like an outlet mall or
No,
a
no,
gas
so
station?
it's,
something like
like
a
an
grace
on-road
truck
kind of
On,
thing. Yeah.
oh, okay.
or
That was
like
it.
a grace trucking
Yeah.
type.
Oh, okay, like Wyoming has it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So like
Okay.
gas station, car stop kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Still a great idea if we can make it happen.
And that's where our official plan and review comes in, because right now that's all designated agricultural land. If we want to see that in the distant future, we need to make sure we're preparing that foundation and the framework so that as things go along, our official plan says, yeah, we want to promote that area as a corridor type get off at the stop.
So was our official plan, I didn't think it was a continually evolving document. I thought it was you set the plan and then you revisit
You
every
should-
5 years or something.
Yes, every 5 years you're supposed to.
And
yes.
then that way, okay.
You can make amendments to it. A council can amend their official plan at any time as they go along.
Okay.
Just like any other person who wants an application to be forwarded and doesn't comply, they're welcome to make an application.
Oh,
against
okay.
it.
Okay, thank you.
So the idea of the official plan, an official plan is supposed to be like a 20-year document, and you're supposed to just visit it every 5 years to make sure that it's still in compliance, it's still what you're wanting to do. So that's why there's the 5-year review.
Okay.
But the last time we've actually done a full 5-year review was, I think, back in 2010.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And the plan was to do it this past term, but then we did the surplus fund running services, and then going with the county planning department. And the problem with that was that they are trying to figure out a schedule as to which municipalities are going to get their review done when, and
And
hopefully.
the
Oh,
county
see, I
official plan
assumed it
is
was
not
done once you did the surplus fund dwellings. I thought
No,
that
we
was
just
like
specifically looked at that
That
one.
was
when
our-
we pulled that out.
Yeah.
Our
Oh,
amendment
okay.
number 10 is what that's referred to. Is amendment
Oh,
10.
okay.
Is
Yeah,
our
I saw that.
specific policy for surplus fund going services, and we can't move forward in updating our official plan until the accounting official plan is in place, which is nearing completion. So
So
I'm expecting it'll be this summer probably before it's done. So once it's done, then that sets the framework, because we have to be in compliance with the county official plan as our consent. They give us the authority to do the consents and
Well, they
work
do
it out.
too. Yeah, yeah.
because there's no sense of us updating ours and then the county updating theirs
Yes.
2 months later, and then us having to be updating
Makes
again.
sense,
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else we didn't bring up that somebody wants to bring up? Ideas? Pie in the sky? Okay. Anything else you want from council?
Can we start at 6 on Monday evening with a closed session?
Sure.
Council, good with that? It'll be 6 o'clock, closed session, we'll start at 7 with regular council. Okay, so what'll happen is you'll get your regular council stuff on Thursday, and then on your Adelaide Metcalfe email, you'll receive your closed session package
Okay.
on Friday.
So do we have community improvement plans in place now? I noticed there's a reference to it
There's
in.
reference to it, but we have none at this point.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and then this is how you'll do that.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I like.
We'll reevaluate the ABC to make sure they're currently,
Yeah.
they're not dated or anything, so that we can make sure that they get in compliance, so. We'll review the whole plan to make sure it's up to date.
The only other thing I had was those pages that go in sideways, you still have to turn your head, because unless
Yeah.
you,
We
unless
will
you can find the
reformat it, so
audio.
everything goes the same way, so.
Yeah,
We have a photocopier that now will do that as we tell it to, so.
that's good.
Again, the matrix should be separate, because that's your document you wanna be out with all the time, whereas the plan itself is, your matrix is the one you're gonna refer to when you get your updates on what we're doing and that kind of stuff, so.
You should be fine if you printed it as a PDF on the computer, and then it should just
Yeah.
you don't have to scan it in.
So we have that, we check that.
Does that mean we'll be able to highlight more effectively on the documents?
I can't promise you that, that's outside my
I
area,
just did that.
so.
He showed me how the IT
Yeah, well,
does work.
I've never been able to get the highlighter to work. I scribble all over it, but I've never been
So-
able to get the
Yeah, the
highlighter.
circle works and the highlighter
It
works.
only so the highlighting only works, and the underlining and that kind of stuff is if it wasn't scanned in.
Scanned.
Yeah.
So-
A lot of times I have to
Oh.
scan them in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so the
we're-
less, the
yeah,
more
we're
that we
trying
can
to work
just
on
save.
home created internally created documents so that we don't have to scan them, so that we can save them as a PDF so you can write on them. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Well, I scribble on them, and of course the grandkids lost my pen.
Yeah, but we're striving to be more cognizant that when you have to scan it as a PDF, you can't write on it, so we're trying to make sure that we have as much typed internally so that you don't have that problem.
And we now have a word processor on here, so we can save the PDFs in
Yes.
our own documents and type on them.
Yep.
So that is well worth the upgrade.
If there is nothing else, I think we need a motion to adjourn at 3:18. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. So next